Hey everybody, welcome. It's Wednesday night. Welcome to the Hang Up here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty, and what am I hung up on this week? Well, the Bible in schools and prayer in schools. By the way, as a reminder, YouTube's tweaking their algorithm again, and in order to make sure that we don't wind up demonetized or hindered, I want to make sure that people know the best things. Wow, got the hiccups right off the bat. Professional speaker, not immune to injury and conditions. Anyway, click on everything. Click on like, subscribe, click on join, click on donate, click on any of the links in the description down below, because all of that and the polls, all of that interaction is how YouTube determines what they're going to put in front of other people's eyes. And so, we, don't get me wrong, we appreciate everybody who's supporting us on Patreon or with a channel membership or through super chats. We'll be reading all the super chats over $10 tonight after we get done with calls. And by the way, this is a call-in show. As soon as I get done with my little opening, we'll be having a conversation and then taking calls. But all of those things really help the channel. But just clicking around increases the impressions and the algorithm so that more people get to see this, so that there are more people finding it and more people who can potentially call in and interact, whether they agree with us or disagree with us. And not that we all agree or disagree. So there's that. For 20 years now, I've been asking people to tell me what you believe and why. And in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I've seen some cyclical trends in the way apologetics tends to work. And there may be an argument that is fashionable for, 6 months to a year. Then after everybody knocks it down, it falls out of fashion and a new one, well, not a new one, another old argument shows up again. And that one stays fashionable for a while. And then you run through this cycle. And so it'll be, here's cosmological arguments, here's moral arguments, here's presuppositionalist apologetics, here's cosmological arguments, here's first cause arguments, here's, going through all those categories. There's plenty of recycling going on and virtually nothing new. Like I engage on occasion with some apologists who want to try out what they think are new arguments, but they're just respins of old arguments. The categories, cosmological arguments, there are a bunch of different cosmological arguments. But in addition to the arguments for God, there are people who have zero interest in presenting any evidence or argument for what they believe. They just want to impose it upon everyone that they can through legislation and by making sure that their version of their religion gets some privileged position and status. I've long been an advocate of church-state separation, or it's more accurately called separation of religion and government, because that separation protects both. What we're seeing now in Oklahoma and other places is yet another cyclical event where people try to get the Bible and prayer back into schools. Now, let me be clear. Prayer was never removed from schools. What was removed from schools was mandatory school-led forced prayers of we as a homeroom were all going to pray together to start the day off. That was removed. You couldn't possibly remove prayers from school. Every time a test hits a table, somebody's fucking praying. Guaranteed. Now, you've got... I can hear Brian. But you have this where now we're seeing, we want to push the Bible back in there. And we're going to start it off by saying, here's a prayer that I'm going to pray. This is like the superintendent of schools or whatever, that I'm going to pray. That's a praying to God and praying for Donald Trump. And you students, you can pray along silently if you want or not. Completely up to you. And so they think that this is an exercise of religious freedom. And these are often dubbed religious freedom bills. And they think that they are empowering people to exercise their religious freedom. But what they're really doing is attempting to push their particular view of religion onto others. And that's the exact opposite of religious freedom. You don't need prayer and Bible study in public schools. You can do that at home. You can do that at church. If you're not doing enough for your God and for your children's spiritual welfare in church and at home, what do you think moving it to the school is going to do? Neither the Bible nor prayer have ever demonstrated any effectiveness at anything. Not at educating people, not at improving morality, not in making a better society, none of those things. There's a guy who went to Hawaii. I've told this story before. And he was at a football game, and he noticed in the program for the football game that they were going to have a prayer before the game. And, as a fine, upstanding Christian man, he was really enthused that they were going to be having a prayer before this football game. And the football game started, and the prayer was not a Christian prayer at all. It was actually a sort of Polynesian native prayer dance thing. And it woke him up to this concept that if you allow prayer in schools, and if you require prayer in schools, there's no guarantee that it's going to be the type of prayer you want. And quite frankly, while I have my problems with Satanists, they are probably the strongest advocates for the proper implementation of church-state separation. And I think that every student in Oklahoma should learn two groups of 2 words. The first group of 2 words is religious freedom, and the second group of 2 words is Hail Satan, so that every time their school tries to become a church and have a Bible reading and have a voluntary prayer, they should just say, Hail Satan, Hail Satan, Hail Satan, Hail Satan. And when the schools come after them to get that shut down, there are organizations, both legal organizations and organizations like, Satanic Temple and other things, that can potentially help push back and fight this. Because if they're going to really put prayer and Bible reading in schools, then we should push back in the way that is most effective at getting it shut down. Voluntary prayer, by the way, we already know is unconstitutional and doesn't do anything for the students. We've seen it in before sporting events where the entire team will get ready, stand together and do their huddle. And then somebody will say, let's do a quick prayer. It's entirely voluntary. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to. The problem is saying it's entirely voluntary. You don't have to participate if you don't have to. We all know that's a lie. Because the people who don't want to participate are not likely to walk off and stand elsewhere, because that lines them up to be outed as not a fellow believer and ostracized as not a fellow believer in whatever version they've got going on. Well, you don't have to say the prayer. You can just have a moment of silence there. Yeah, you can. But why? Why should we take time out of study or fun so that you can praise your God? Praise him on your own time. This is the time for the students. This is a time for them to learn. And by the way, once you add Bible readings to schools, not only are you going to get, the satanic booklets and workbooks and things, but you're going to get the Quran, you're going to get Dianetics. What are you going to do? Which version of the Bible is going to be read? Is it going to be a Catholic Bible, a Protestant Bible? How do you know it's going to be the one you want? The correct and best implementation of separation of religion and government and religious freedom is to allow everyone to have and practice whatever religion they want on their own, right up to the point where it impacts somebody else's life. And that is definitely impacting other people's lives when you are having guided prayer, suggested prayer. Oh, it's not mandatory prayer. It's just suggested prayer. And we're going to get the Bible back into schools. If you want to show that prayer or the Bible actually does some good, I'm sure the Templeton Foundation might jump in on that. They try to test religion whenever they can, and it always fails. No religious claim has ever demonstrated any efficacy beyond that of random chance. But if you want to show that a prayer or Bible does good, you can start by demonstrating it in your churches before you move it into the schools, because your churches are loaded with corruption and sexual predators and con artists and smug, holier than thou folks who very likely voted in direct opposition to their own best interest because the love of Christ doesn't extend to the poor, the brown, or the queer. So before you come at the rest of us with your book and your prayers to try to inject them into our schools, you first need to go and show that there's any good reason by cleaning up your fucking church. Then maybe we can talk. Until then, it's a violation of the First Amendment. It is immoral. It is incredibly stupid. And it is functionally harmful because there are better ways that we could be spending our time and our money. We don't need to go buy Trump's Bible and say a prayer to God to save Trump every morning. Oh no, please protect dear leader. That's not the way this is supposed to work. And I get it. I'm back in the minority again. That somehow I woke up in a world that is functionally broken, where American citizens are both more stupid and more callous on the whole than I suspected was possible. There's a bunch who don't participate, don't see the use. They bought into nonsense ideas that, they're all the same and it's all rigged and there's nothing to do. And so they don't participate and they're actually doing nothing to help their fellow human being stand up and fight against fascism and Christian nationalism and things like that. I hope that these new bills, these new efforts by Oklahoma and others, get shut down without costing taxpayers a truckload of money, because it won't be long before a lot of taxpayers won't have the money for that. As the tariffs start taking off, then the tariff wars will begin, and the price of so many things is going to skyrocket, that the notion that any school should spend $60 for a Trump Bible so that they can put on affectations and pretend deference to Jesus when really they're just promoting bigotry and ignorance. That's the day when the rest of us have to get up and say, enough is enough. We cannot permit this. It doesn't matter that you've taken over every branch of the government. You're not going to be shoving your religion down people's throats. It's bad enough that you are taking away rights left and right from queer folks and wanting to deport millions of people. The truth is, people pray when they're desperate. This is why there's no atheists in foxholes nonsense, which absolutely there are, in fact, atheists in foxholes. They're the ones that are actually firing back rather than cowering down on their knees with their hands folded in prayer. No atheist in foxholes, though, is something that's there because it recognizes the futility and the frustration of human beings facing incredible challenges and daunting odds. That in our desperation, we will flail about and try to do anything, including appealing to magical beings. And when you have no real options, when you have no good options, that's when the weak pray. That's when it's time for them to have a Bible study. And so look at Oklahoma, who's near the bottom of education. They don't know how to fix it. They don't have any ideas. They don't have any plans. They don't even have a concept of a plan. They have nothing that they can do to fix the Oklahoma broken education system. And so in their desperation, they have, because they are stupid, reached the conclusion that, you know what, we used to be number one in education, and then they took the Bible out of school, and now it's not as good. Well, that's a logical fallacy. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because of this. You haven't shown a causal connection between removing mandatory Bible readings and prayers and a decline in education. Just like you haven't shown that that's tied to Common Core or whatever boogeyman you want to try to use to scare people next. But the Bible and prayers are there when the theists are too desperate and they don't have an actual plan. When you don't know how to fix the problem, let's just start praying. Well, cool. Go for it. But pray in your church and pray at home first. Pray quietly to yourself. But don't you dare start suggesting that we need students to be praying and forcing, essentially, students who would not be praying voluntarily to either participate or set themselves up for more harassment and bullying. Try to come up with an idea. Try to come up with a plan. Try to fix the problem. Because every time theists, and Christians in particular, give up, they make things worse because they're not helping fix the problem at hand. Everybody join me in welcoming tonight's guest, Brian Dalton, also known as Mr. Deity. It's been a hot minute since Brian's been on here with me. How are you, sir?
I am good. I have a pushback to that no atheists in the foxholes, and that is there are no believers at the funeral.
Yeah. No believers at a funeral.
They're about their loved one going to heaven. They're weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. There's just no believers at a funeral.
It's a difficult kind of figuring out what parts of religion to attack. Because for years I've tried to stay focused on let's evaluate arguments and evidence. When I ask people, tell me what you believe and why, I'm expecting them to give some description of some kind of God thing. By the way, if you're calling in today, you just tell us what you believe and why. But the why comes in two categories. It's what convinced them or what they think convinced them, which either one is that category. And the other category is what they think should convince somebody else. Now, why is it that you have some sort of special reason for why you became convinced? Inevitably, it's, oh, well, God did a miraculous work in my life, or God revealed himself to me in some way, or, that, and that's a personal thing that I can't do for you. Like if God showed up right before the show and said, hey, I'm real, I'm here, I've demonstrated it, and now all of a sudden I'm a believer, I can't share that same experience or that same justification with anybody else. So I have to come up with some other reason. It is a frustrating thing because there are so many things wrong with religions and wrong with religious organizations and wrong with believers working on behalf of those things. I have tried over and over to make sure, let's keep this intellectually rigorous and let's talk about the arguments and here's the fallacies and do you have your evidence? And instead, what I'm finding is that people offer arguments because if they said why they actually believe, they know nobody would take them seriously.
Right. Religious experience is a powerful thing. I remember listening to who's this? There's a young philosopher guy who I really like on Emerson Green. He was talking about how the fact that he thinks that religious experience would change him. That could change him into a believer. And I pushed back saying, well, that's exactly what I had. I had religious experiences when I was a believer. And in my case, if people who don't know me, I'm a foreman, which is a former Mormon, and Mormonism is one of the few religions that you can empirically demonstrate is just absolutely wrong because the religion is based entirely on empirical claims about who the Native Americans are. And they're just not who Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon says they are. So I know for myself with certainty that I was having religious experiences about something that was just complete bullshit. I can go show you what bullshit it is empirically, demonstrably, which is rare, in terms of religions. I think anyone else just piled on with the empirical claims that are so easily testable and falsifiable. And so I know you can have I had amazing religious experiences. I had visions and all kinds of shit I don't even want to talk about it, but, at a certain, yeah, it might. But at a certain point, you look at the data and you look at the evidence and you go, oh crap. And then you realize probably one of the most important lessons of my life, the easiest person in the world to fool is me.
Yeah.
And especially I want something to be true. And I
Yes.
really
You,
did.
you are a motivated believer.
Yes, exactly. And a motivated thinker, which is even worse.
It's strange because, so I think one of my favorite kind of anecdotes, in, I think, 9th or 10th grade, I took a comparative religions course, and it was an elective in high school. I think it should be required because
I did too.
the course, as I remember sitting there going, wow, all these other religions are so weird. How lucky am I to have, been raised in the one true religion? And I
Yes.
thought this seriously without any hint of awakening or irony or anything.
Right.
And yet all of us know, who grew up in religions, that we knew all those people in all those other religions were fundamentally wrong about something. They were having, it gets fuzzy when you start talking about Judeo-Christian, which isn't a thing. The Jews and the Christians are going to fight right up until it's more convenient for them to band together, and then all of a sudden, boom! There's this new thing called Judeo-Christian. Where the fuck did that come from? I think it came from 1980s and the moral majority. But if you're able to recognize, oh, those Muslims, they may be having what they think is a sincere religious experience, but it's either delusions or demons, because they're part of a corrupt, religion. That's how I, as a former
Right.
Southern Baptist, look at it. And Mormons, I tell you, I was in the Scouts for a while when I was a kid, and I think the Mormons ran all the Scout troops in the area. And the only thing that was ever an issue is my folks would tell me, hey, the people you're going to the house, they're Mormons. They're not Christians. They don't believe the same thing we believe. But they're very nice people, and just don't talk to them about religion. And so that
Right.
was, that stuck in my head. Hang on, I'm going to Scouts. Why would this be a thing? But the preemptive, that giving that instruction, I think if I'd have told the Mormon folks that were running our Cub Scout group that I was warned not to talk to them about religion, I could imagine in their head, they would say, oh, look, these people in these false religions don't want their kids to know the truth, so they're afraid to have them talk to us. We should, send them a copy of the Book of Mormon.
Right. Right. Well, that's what Mormons do. They just take any opportunity to talk religion and send you a Book of Mormon and try to convert you. I've never seen another religion that's so completely committed to going after people. I mean, I remember being taught basically this probably sounds worse than it is, but almost to prey on people who are in bad spots. Like if something has happened to them and turned their life upside down, well, that's a good time for you to get in there. In fact, that might be God working his magic so that you can, get in there and get your message in and maybe, sell them on the truth and stuff like that. And I think back, it just seems so horrible and awful that the person's going through hell and you're thinking of, oh, goody, I might have an opening. Ugh.
Well, we have calls lined up. We have 3 theist callers already ready to go. As a reminder for everybody, genuinely, we want to know what you believe and why. I would like to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to present their reasons, but I absolutely guarantee you, I'm going to interrupt, and I'm going to interrupt to ask specific questions. And just know that it's because I've done this for 20 years, and I do know a little bit about what questions might move the conversation along better, or at least identify when we're going to be at an impasse. I'm going to try to make use of the hold button. If you're on hold, you'll hear a beep, and after the beep, you don't have to ask if we can hear you. If you start talking and we can't hear you, you'll find out really quickly. And if you're calling in on the web client on your phone, which at least one of the callers is right now, you may have to tap your phone to wake it up and then tap the browser window to wake it up as well. In addition, there are a bunch of shows here on the Line Network. Boom, boom, boom. And, oh wait, that's for next week. So tonight, so I don't know if there's a Transatlantic call-in show tomorrow. I think not, is my current thought. And, but there is a Cus I Wanna with Owen and Eric on Friday. No, Saturday night. There you go. And then coming up in the following week, the Sunday show at 2:00 this Sunday, December 1st. It's listed as me and Seth Andrews, and we just did last week, so that'll be cool. Monday, Skeptalk is going to be Aron Ra and John Gleason. Tuesdays, Chewed Gum will be Alyssa Ljub and Catherine. And then we don't know who's going to be back on with me next week for the hang up, but Sunday show after dark on the 1st is going to be Forrest and Jimmy. So that's going to be like a late night Sunday thing for sure. So there we go. We have like 448 people participated in this poll that we took on, can you tell our host why they should believe in your God? And 3% of them said they were calling in. So that's like 15 people, 14 people. Can't do the math that quick. But we have callers already waiting. I'm going to start here with Gohan in Texas. No pronouns preferred. So I don't know how to deal with that, but okay. It says here you're smoothing your relationship with your non-binary family. What's going on, Gohan?
Hi, how's it going?
Fair.
It's going. Sorry. Well, yeah, it's kind of been going bad for my parts of my family as well. So I voted for Trump. My brother voted for Kamala, and maybe about a year ago, he told me he was non-binary, and we've had some discussions about it, but it's like he's been like freezing me out. I'm not sure if that's the right word, and
Good.
I'm just trying to see how can I stop that.
You can apologize and stop voting for fascists.
Well, so I would, like, he was freezing me out even before I voted.
Good.
So I was just trying to see, like, one major thing we have a disagreement on is the whole idea.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you've been repeatedly problematic, both in calls and elsewhere. If I was your non-binary sibling, I would be freezing you out as well.
Well, I mean, that's fine. That's you. But
Okay.
we have a fundamental disagreement on, like, what is non-binary. And, like, I'm honestly trying to ask questions. He's asking me questions, and my answers I'm giving him. I'm trying to be as honest as I can.
You should consider calling into the Transatlantic call-in show on Thursday. There won't be one this week, but maybe another week, and maybe somebody can teach you about non-binary. But I would honestly,
that's not what
I would recommend you just listen to your sibling.
I have. Like, I can't say I understand his points. I've heard his points, but at the end of the day, they still don't make sense to me, especially when
it doesn't need to make sense to you. It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to make sense to you, Gohan. You call someone the names that they ask you to call. You use the pronouns they prefer, and you treat them with respect and dignity. What difference should it make whether or not you understand what somebody else's experience is?
Because then I'm lying to him. Is that okay?
You're lying.
Just making
So you don't respect him. You don't. You're unwilling to use their pronouns. And what's the lie?
That I don't believe he is not a male.
Okay.
Or that I do believe he is not a male. That would be a lie if I said that.
Yeah. So then you don't have to say, "Hey, I believe you're not a male." You can just still use.
He's always asking questions.
Listen to me, Gohan. Listen to me. I just bent over fucking backwards to give your shitty brain a message.
All right.
Listen, you do not have to say, I think you're male, and you do not have to say, I think you're not male. You do not have to say, I think you're non-binary, but what you can do is use the name and pronouns that your sibling prefers. That's not a lie. You're calling them what they want to be called.
So then what does the pronouns go, what do the pronouns relate to? I think that might be a point I'm hung up on.
Go on, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do you care? Why do you care? Why don't you just hear this person out? Yeah, but he's told you what he wants, what his preference is. Why can't you just respect it and
because I don't want to lie to my brother. You're
not lying.
What does that
You're
mean,
being a dick.
If I don't understand how pronouns, if he says his pronouns are they, them, because
then his so I'm going to mute you now. Your siblings' pronouns are they, them. Throughout this entire call, you have used the wrong pronouns for your sibling. You have none preferred for you, which I think is a fucking lie. But if you don't understand pronouns, you should go get the Schoolhouse Rock DVD box set and just watch the one on pronouns over and over and over again, because this is something the rest of us learned in the first grade.
So you're right. It could be something explainable in the first grade. I'm still not getting it. My biggest question is, like, when my brother is saying, like, yeah, I don't feel like a man. So then my question is, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, you...
go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's all about you. I don't want to lie to him. I don't want to this. Why isn't it about them?
Because if I'm lying, that's wrong. If I'm lying to someone I love, that's wrong.
Is it wrong for you to be a dick to somebody? Is it wrong for you to be a dick to somebody and to pretend like you're lying when you're not lying?
I mean, if I'm lying, that's wrong. Can you tell me that lying is good to somebody I love?
You haven't mentioned a lie.
Yeah. What is the lie?
That I don't believe that the pronouns they, them are accurate.
That's not a lie.
Fucking business.
Yeah.
It is. If I want to be honest, it is my business.
No, stop. You're not lying when you call someone what they want to be called.
So then my major question is what? Well, okay, I don't. You don't have to believe.
I don't.
What
I
are?
don't believe you.
Sorry. Go.
Go on. Will, why do you feel like you're lying when you're just showing respect to somebody? And doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about your worldview? That to show respect to another human, like you're lying?
I need to understand. Sorry, I need to understand.
No, you don't. You know what you need to understand? You need to understand that your sibling, whether you understand what it's like to be non-binary or not, is non-binary. You need to understand that your sibling has a preferred pronouns. You need to understand that your sibling has a preferred pronoun that you are repeatedly refusing to use, which makes you a dick. You don't love your brother.
Can you explain to me what non-binary means?
Yes, it means someone who does not feel that they fit into the categories of man or woman.
So then my follow-up question to my brother is, what are those categories? What if, like, let's say I'm born male.
I'm done with you, Gohan. I'm done with you, Gohan. You talked to your brother and you've had no success. You have repeatedly misgendered. I'm still talking. You've repeatedly misgendered your sibling here. And here, all right, I'm going to mute you and you will never speak on my show again. How you like them apples? Because you can't shut your fucking pie hole. You can't be respectful to your sibling. You feel that you need to understand it. You don't need to understand shit. You don't need to understand what it's like to be gay. You don't need to understand what it's like to be trans. You don't need to understand what it's like to be black, what it's like to be Spanish, what it's like to be lighter skin, what it's like to have eyes that are different from somebody else, what it's like to feel somebody else's experiences. You don't need to understand that. What you need to understand is the basics of fucking humanism and decency, to treat people the way they've asked. But instead, you continue to impose your view onto your sibling's view. This isn't about you, you egomaniacal jackass. It's about your sibling. Go get some fucking help. It's not up to you to understand. It's up to you to treat your sibling well. I'm not even going to let you answer. Bye.
Amen. Try to understand basic human decency. That's your first step, I think.
It's really strange. Oh, I don't understand what it's like. Okay. You didn't need to understand what it's like. You know what? I don't understand what it's like to be an immigrant in the United States. But that doesn't mean that I can't be compassionate towards them. It doesn't mean that I should just not care about Trump's plans for deportation. It means that when I run into people here in Austin, some of whom are probably not citizens, that they may be going through things that I can't possibly grasp because I was born here. I don't have to understand it to be compassionate. I don't have to understand what it's like to be this person. All I need to understand is that they are a person. And if somebody's got a preferred name or pronouns, well, I just think I would be lying to them. No, you're lying now. You're lying to yourself right now that you just don't understand pronouns. The fuck you don't. You referred to your sibling as he, knowing that they preferred they. Are you too stupid to understand that? Well, I don't know what it's like to be non-binary. Good. Count yourself lucky, because it means that you're not going to be shit on and victimized in the way that you are shitting on and victimizing your sibling.
So much of life just seems to be a failure of imagination. You know, even if we're talking about the God stuff and everything, there's a failure of imagination to imagine that the world could exist without such a being, or you know, there's so many. This is such a failure of imagination on his part. It's a refusal to put yourself in the shoes of someone else and try to feel the empathy that you would have. I don't know what it's like to be a Hindu. I don't feel like a liar if I talk about Shiva or Ganesha, or, you know, these are battles that people are picking. Like you said, I mean, it really does seem like you just want to be a dick. You just want to be a prick and give someone grief, brother who you're supposed to love and care about. I don't get these people. And I do think that religion plays a big part of this, because religion is, it's not just about, I've been talking about this a lot lately on my shows. We all understand when we leave religion that our minds have been poisoned, right? We get out, we try to understand, you know, critical thinking. We read books on it. We get that part done. What we don't understand is how it poisons the human heart, because it has to. It has to. You cannot murder a gay person or want to hate a gay person without crippling your heart. And there's so much in religion that says to you, do not be compassionate towards these people, or maybe all of these people.
I figured out a better potential response to Gohan, and that's this. Gohan doesn't know what it's like to be a woman, but he'll refer to women as she and her.
Yes. That's a great. Yes. That's perfect. That's perfect.
So there you go, Gohan. You don't need to call back. You can just, you know, sit with that, you know, just kind of soak in it for a little while. I got a really interesting call here that I'd like for you to start off with, but Kira's a theist from Canada, pronouns she, her. And Kira, you may have to tap the phone and wake up the web client or not, but she's got a specific question about secular humanism and Christianity together. So, Kira, welcome to the show. You're on with Mr. Deity and Matt.
Hello.
Please tap the screen and then tap the browser so that we can hear you. Oh, please be here and be working. I really want this call.
Well, you just jinxed it.
I know. I'm so sorry, Kira. I'm going to put you back in the queue. And you can tap your phone, you can tap the browser to wake it up because it goes to sleep. But here's Kira's question, is I really want us to kind of address this. So Kira's question is, can I be a secular humanist and a Christian at the same time, or are they mutually exclusive? What do you think, Brian?
I think you can. Sure. Because secular humanism is, I'm trying to think of the manifesto and think if there's anything in there that is necessarily anti-Christian. I can't think of anything offhand. Now, secular humanism is a little different from humanism, but the secular part is really just about separating government and religion and religious freedom. The actual kind, not the kind where Christians get to impose their will on others. They're free to impose their will on others. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think there is at least some small conflict. The notion that, so the foundation of secular humanism being secular, the first manifesto starts with the recognition or the assumption that, we can't, if there is a God out there, there's no reason to think that we can or should be able to appeal to that God to help us with things, and we're going to have to solve the problems ourselves. And there are versions of Christianity that I don't think are incredibly in conflict with it, but orthodox views on Christianity. See, secular humanism doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not you can or should believe in the supernatural. That's really in the realm of skepticism. It's basically just a foundation. And I think that the biggest conflict, apart from one being secular and the other one appealing to a God and what a God believes, I don't know how you can be a Christian and not advocate for some version of the Christian God as the governor and arbiter and someone you can appeal to. And that part would be in conflict with the, hey, we can't really rely on a God. But I think there's probably a version of humanism, whether or not it counts as secular or not, that might be consistent with some versions of Christianity. Let's see if we can get Kira back on. Kira, are you there?
Hello?
Hey, there you are.
Hello.
Welcome. Were you able to hear all of that?
Most of it.
Cool. Well, the floor is yours. We can talk about what would work and what wouldn't work.
But yeah, so just, I'm a Methodist. I'm a very liberal Christian. So I do not believe the Bible is essentially real. I don't believe it's literal, but I believe it's a lot of metaphors that we can use in our life.
So, as a kind of liberal Methodist theist, do you think that there's a God that is like an actual being or just an idea?
No, I'm a universalist though.
Okay. I think, have you tried going to a Unitarian Universalist church? Because you get the kind of some of those more liberal Christian views mixed with a lot of humanism.
Right. No, I don't like those churches because I do like a Christ-centered church because I do feel like, I do think he is the creator of the universe after all, right?
Well, I thought you just said you didn't think of that.
No, I do. I'm just saying I think everyone gets saved eventually. Everyone will be saved.
Why do you think that?
Because God is all loving.
Okay.
Makes sense
How do
to
you
me.
know that?
Yeah.
Well, That's the God I know. That's the Jesus I know.
Well, how do you know this Jesus?
Personal revelation.
Okay. How do you know your personal revelation actually comes from Jesus and isn't just your head?
That's the God I know. Well, what's the damage if it is from my head? What's the damage done?
Well, I couldn't tell you specifically what the damage is, but generally speaking, believing things that aren't true is a problem because it means that your brain has flawed mechanisms for distinguishing between truth and fiction.
What if I have better outcomes then?
What if what?
What if I have better outcomes in my life?
Okay. Better outcomes. So first of all, I don't know how you know that you have better outcomes, but like, give me an example of a better outcome.
Reduced anxiety.
Reduced anxiety. Okay. Does reduced anxiety mean that the God is real, or just that believing reduces anxiety?
Just believing would be enough.
Yeah. So if it's the case that we don't actually know that there's a God, but we do have good reason to think that belief may impact human psychology in beneficial ways, then I would think it would be in our best interest to find out the mechanisms that are making people's lives better and keep those while getting rid of the false religious beliefs.
This would be one way to Jesus, Matt.
Sorry, what?
This would be one way to Jesus.
There's only one way to Jesus. I don't know how that's a response to what I just said at all.
And it doesn't sound like it matters to you either way. If we're all going to be saved, why do we even need to care about it?
Because you'll get more treasures in heaven.
Okay.
How much treasure do
Yeah. How much treasure are you getting?
Hopefully a lot.
Hopefully
just the
a
fact
lot.
that I continue to exist will be quite a thrill for a few seconds.
What kind of treasure do you hope to get, and what is it used for in heaven?
Well, we'll see when we get to that.
Well, no, you don't get to do that. Sorry. You can't just do we'll see when we get there.
Are you going to get a bigger...
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm asking, do you get a bigger mansion than me because you believed here?
Well, there are many mansions in heaven, and my Father's house has many mansions in it.
I know what the Bible says. I don't care what the Bible says.
But I'm curious to know what you think in terms of, like, there are many mansions. Do you get a bigger mansion because you were a believer? Or how about the people who've really suffered some horrible, horrible stuff? I would imagine shouldn't they get the biggest mansions, Matt? I would think those people who really got slammed here on the planet should get the
biggest mansions in heaven, in my opinion. You're making a really good point. You're making you're making a really good point. I think sorry.
Am I gonna is there gonna be sleeping in heaven?
I don't know. I know we don't have bodies, so we don't have sex.
Bodies. You know we don't have bodies. How do you know that?
I thought we got resurrected.
Jesus said that.
I could have swore that
Jesus said
you would get a new body.
Yeah, it's not like a human body, though.
How do you know what it's like?
Because Jesus said we can't have sex with it.
I'm having a difficult time understanding you. There's people who think that you're using a voice alteration thing. and it's making it a little garbled and robotic, so it's difficult to understand what you're saying sometimes.
Maybe our bodies are like Slimer from Ghostbusters. Is that more? Would that be a more accurate thing? I don't think he has genitalia.
We have
should
no
say
way of
they.
knowing.
Well,
Yeah.
if we have no way of knowing, then why would you believe something that you don't have any way of knowing?
Why do I need to know all these specifics?
Well, I like to understand stuff before I claim to believe it. Matter of fact, I don't even know how you can claim to believe something that you don't understand the how or why. But I mean, so for example, in 2 Corinthians, this is where it talks about we're going to get new bodies. We will not just be spirits. We will put the new heavenly bodies on like new clothing. And it specifically says we will put on heavenly bodies. We will not be spirits without bodies. So we're going to have a body. It's just not necessarily, this is what the book says. How do we know whether any of that is true? And will that new body need to sleep? Like in my mansion, how many bedrooms will I have? And why would I have a bedroom?
We don't know. We don't know that yet.
Okay. I'm not see, it's fine. I'm good with saying I don't know. The problem is you're calling in to tell us all these things about your understanding of God, and you don't know that any of it's true. So would you agree that it would be silly for Brian and myself to believe based on what you've said?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Can you show how anything you've said should, in a rational thinker, warrant belief in your claim?
It's all upsides with no downside.
Yeah, I'm completely exhausted from your garbage script, Kira. We have nothing more to say.
Okay.
You gonna say goodbye?
Bye, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, go laugh when you're not live. I can hear them like kind of snickering at stuff.
So you have so much more experience of this because I don't do any of this live stuff. I script everything I do. I have This is so. I mean, even I'm just realizing we're kind of the OGs at this in terms of the movement in general, aren't we? You've been doing it for 20. I've just passed 18.
Yeah.
And who else was doing this in 2007? Or I can't remember. I can't think.
I don't know. I started doing the atheist experience in 2004. You and I actually first met at the Rapture Ram in Oakland. I think that was the first time. We might have met once before then, but I know we were both there at the Rapture Ram in Oakland.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It was great because right in the middle of your talk, there was an earthquake.
I know. I bring the heat, man. I bring the heat when I come and speak.
I am going to remember, if we do these shows together for another 20 years, in 20 years, I'm going to be like, remember that time there was a fucking earthquake while you were talking to a bunch of atheists? And they all looked around.
Yes. That was an amazing moment. Yeah.
We have some more theist callers on here. And so let's see if we can get somebody who's actually willing and able to defend their beliefs. So Ryan's a theist from Pennsylvania, pronouns are he, him, who says the Christian God is the one true God and the gospel is true. Ryan, how can we know that the Christian God is the one true God?
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I would say the first way you could know it would be personal testimony. And then the second way you could know it would be evidence of the written gospels, the Bible, and, the numerous people that profess faith globally would be two good evidences that I would, can proclaim.
So you think personal testimony and the fact that a whole bunch of people believe it is good evidence for the claim being true?
I would say not just that a bunch of people believe it, but that they believe it because it's hinged upon the written book of the Bible, and that it's been proclaimed, studied, and with us even up to this day. And so I would say, yes, the fact that a lot of people believe it is, it at least has to be investigated. But the fact that
Sure.
it does point to a very specific text, I would say, also helps give it a little bit even more credibility.
Why? There are a billion Muslims on the planet. They have a book and a bunch of
Mhm.
people who believe it. Why is yours correct and theirs is wrong?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's a question I ask
Thanks.
myself too. One of the things that I kind of wrestle with is that the Muslim faith and the Quran actually believe in the Old Testament of the Bible, correct?
Parts of it, for sure, yeah. They have a
Yeah.
slightly different
Yeah.
take on some aspects, yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess one of the things that I struggle with, because this is a question that all theists should be, prepared to talk about and have an account for, or I guess Christian theists, Christian people, and I guess the Old Testament of the Bible heavily prophesies the Messiah to come, and so the Muslim faith puts their faith in, Muhammad. But the Old Testament of the Bible points pretty clearly to the coming of the Messiah, who would then be Jesus Christ. And so I think there's a
Except that Jews
conflict
don't think so.
there.
Except that Jews don't think so.
Yeah,
So
correct.
you've tried to split it down to just Christians and Muslims, but you've got Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and Jews, generally speaking, don't think that Jesus was the Messiah. And then you've got
Because
Muslims,
he didn't fulfill.
right? And Muslims also don't think Jesus was God. They consider him a prophet. So of the three Abrahamic religions, two of them don't think that Jesus is divine.
Correct. Yeah, like I said, that's a big conflict, and that's one of the reasons why, there's so much conflict within just the realm of the Abrahamic religion. And so
It'd be really nice.
I guess
It'd be really nice if there was actual evidence, so that, because right now the only thing you've pointed to is personal testimony, and we know how flawed personal testimony is, and we know that people who are running around saying, "Oh, I prayed and God did a marvelous work in my life," there's no reason to think that that's actually true, because
Mhm.
we haven't shown any sort of causal connection between a God and the results of their prayer. And then the second thing is that, oh, there's these written gospels and numerous people who profess faith, except that we don't have the originals for any of the gospels. We don't know who wrote them. We don't have any autographed copies. And even if we did, we can't interview them. There aren't eyewitnesses. They weren't written by eyewitnesses. And even if they were written by eyewitnesses, the eyewitnesses could be wrong in the conclusions they reach. And so here we are a couple of thousand years after some supposed events, which nobody can show even happened. I mean, whether or not Jesus even existed is at least a somewhat open question, but whether or not he did any of the things or said any of the things that are attributed to him is definitely an open question. And yet you're saying, because there are numerous people who profess faith, and because these other religions kind of are tied to Christianity, that's enough for you to conclude that the Christian God is real.
Yeah, I don't think that's the only thing that should convince somebody that the Christian faith is real. Like I said,
I don't think it should convince anybody. What evidence do you have for Christianity that is unique and distinct to Christianity that isn't something that someone could claim for their other religion?
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me is that Christianity is fundamentally different than every other religion, in that every other religion teaches you how to be essentially a good person, follow God, don't steal, don't kill, numerous different things.
It's in the Old Testament.
What was that? Sorry.
The stuff that's in the Old Testament.
Yeah, correct. There's that. Yeah, the Old Covenant, and then the Gospels with the New Covenant. But Christianity is fundamentally different than all those religions because.
Let's assume. Okay, because why? Go ahead.
Because the Christianity and the Gospel is not telling us a way in which to live our life to get to God. It's telling us good news that God came down to us. And so that's fundamentally different than every other religion.
Sure. That is, I don't like the phrase fundamentally different, but let me do it this way. Let's say that Christianity is different in that way. So what? Why does that make it true? Does the fact that something is slightly different from other versions of something mean it's the true one? Because if so, then a Muslim could use the exact same argument for its distinction of, not thinking that there's a Messiah as proof that it is fundamentally different. And Judaism, as the originator that hasn't fallen for a false messianic claim and hasn't given up the Ishmael side of the argument that the Muslims have, it can claim that it is fundamentally different. So each of them, by picking out the things that are distinct, can claim they're fundamentally different. Why does fundamentally different in any of them? Why is that a harbinger of truth?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question that I want to get into. So the reason I would say that and the way that I would respond is our human nature in us is driving us to want to do good things. Like we want to try and be better. We realize the areas in which we fail, we hurt people, we do the wrong things that we shouldn't do. And I think all of those religions, in a sense, copy each other in that way. And so when Christianity or the Gospels come along and say there's nothing you can do, I did it for you, and it comes down, it's very counterintuitive to our human nature. And then that's one of the reasons why I believe it.
Why on earth would that make it true? Is it name any other thing, name any other fact in the history of the world that you believe because it's counterintuitive, and only because it's counterintuitive?
I'm sure I could.
We don't have time for this. You're not going to come up with one. This is absolutely. I'm sorry, you broke up, Ryan. What'd you say?
Half spin particles. I'm baffled.
I guess could I just make one point on top of what I said?
Okay.
Sure.
The fact that it is that it's counterintuitive to our human nature makes it very difficult for me to believe that somebody could have just made it up and have it carry out into history this long, be studied this much, and be this much of a conversation. And so that's kind of why I think
it's a failure of imagination on your part, and an overactive imagination in another aspect on your part. You fail to see how something that I think is intuitively obvious and built as Judaism describes the history and the origin, and this builds on it by changing the nature of a Messiah, and it resonates with people not because. Well, if you're told you'd like to be good, but you'll never be good enough, that's going to resonate with people. And if you tell somebody that there's somebody who knows everything and loves them and goes to prepare a place for them, and that there's nothing that they need to do, that this is a gift from God bestowed by grace, instilling faith, that takes all the onus off of people as well. I find it to be an obviously incredibly appealing view for people who are terrified of the world, don't know how it works, and don't understand good epistemology. But there's no reason to think that it's true.
Yeah, I think there is good reason to investigate its truth.
I have investigated.
As
You do realize that people have been investigating these claims from the beginning. And where's the new evidence? Where's any evidence? Where's any empirical evidence? Where's the first sound argument for any of these claims in 2,000 years?
Yeah, but there's also a massive group of people who would say there's plenty of evidence. So how do we come together and deal with that?
It would be very nice if any of them would present it instead of calling in and talking about personal testimony and how popular this distinct belief is. It'd be really nice if somebody would present evidence, but in the entire history of looking at this, nobody has presented specific evidence that is sufficient to warrant belief. Not once. That nobody's been able to demonstrate that prayer works above the rate of chance. Nobody's been able to demonstrate that a God exists. And if a God exists, why is he letting all of you flounder and give garbage reasons instead of providing evidence?
Ryan, do you understand?
I wouldn't know the answer to that, but
Ryan, do you understand that since Christianity has been around, the vast majority of people on this planet have not believed it? I know we live in a Christian environment, and it's easy to get provincial and think, "Oh, well, this must be it." But still, right now on this planet, 75% of people, roughly, don't believe this. Oops, sorry,
I don't know if Ryan's still there.
Ryan, you still there?
I would, yeah, that's fine. To what I said earlier, how many people believe it isn't the only evidence.
It isn't evidence
at all. That's not a credible way to.
It isn't.
And so the counter argument could be made that 75% of the world doesn't believe it. That's also not something that you can propose either.
I agree, Ryan. Let's see if we can get full agreement right here. Does the truth of an idea, is whether an idea is true, is that impacted in any way by the number of people who believe it or how strongly they believe it?
It doesn't prove that it's true. It does give it credibility to investigate.
No, it doesn't.
Can I push back?
Go ahead, Brian.
Can I push back on your assertion that it doesn't matter? Because you have something you have to defend that I don't, and that is that there is a God who wants everyone to be saved. And salvation comes through believing in this story about a man who lived and died and rose again from the dead. So you've got a God who supposedly loves us and does not want that anyone should perish. And the vast majority of people since 33 CE have not believed this thing. Does it seem logical to you that God would, first of all, make it so difficult? I mean, everything Matt said about the writings, about there not being, there's no eyewitnesses to this. This is the single most important event in the history of the universe, 13.8 billion years. God's had a lot of time to figure out how to get people into this thing that is so important for them to believe, not just for the next life, but apparently, as we were told by an earlier caller, there are all kinds of benefits to believing it here now in this life. And he leaves it to a bunch of 4 Greek guys who write a story decades later who never witnessed it. We don't even know if they talked to eyewitnesses. He leaves us so little to go on, and the vast majority of people in history have not believed it. Those numbers do matter in that case.
Yeah, I when you said it is the single most important thing that has happened in history.
It's the only thing that matters. It's literally the
Right.
only
If
thing.
true.
If true. For our eternal salvation, we're talking eternity. It's the only event that matters. And you would think God would have a plan to leave just all kinds of evidence. Jesus was up and roaming around for 40 days and 40 nights. He could have gone to the Chinese. The Mormons think he went to the Native Americans after he rose. He could have left all kinds of evidence all over the world of his rising from the dead. And we literally get nothing from anyone who even makes the claim that they were there and saw it. Doesn't that seem like really bad planning from an all-knowing being who wants us to believe and upon whose our salvation is dependent?
I think that's a reduction of at least the history of the Bible. Obviously, the Bible is a lot more than that. It's a collection of writings. There are copies of copies of copies, but yet it has been retained through the history. And so I think that's a reduction of what the Bible is. But I still do agree that it is important to confront that question as a Christian. And so I do think there's investigation needed. But I would also ask...
Ryan, my apologies, but you keep saying investigation is needed. Do you not think that enough people have spent enough time investigating with zero progress over these millennia?
I guess define progress. What?
Right. This I can take.
Name a single valid and sound argument supported by empirical evidence for the existence of a God.
I have another question, and that is, name me something
Can I
that we
answer Matt's?
Sure.
I'll answer Matt's question, then you can ask the next one.
Okay. Sure.
I think the greatest piece of evidence is the collection of the Bible.
I'm sorry, but the Bible isn't evidence. It is the claim. It is not empirical evidence for anything. It is the claim. What about it should count as evidence? It's just a bunch of stories. There's nothing to support those stories.
Especially if you know how that book was called.
There were real people writing those stories, talking about what they saw in the way of historical fact, the way they were writing. I'm not saying it is historical fact. I'm saying the way they were writing was historical fact. We have a collection of these people talking about this. That, in a sense, is evidence.
No, it's not.
Can be evidence.
That's a claim.
No, it's not. Claims are not evidence. What the Bible is evidence of is that people believed things and wrote them down. It isn't in any way evidence that the things they believed are true.
And again, you don't have people writing things down about what they saw. We don't have anything in the New Testament aside from Paul, who's got some kind of vision. He doesn't touch Jesus's hands and feet and feel the holes, or touch his side and thrust his hand into the wound. We have literally no one who's writing about what they saw.
And even if they did,
Matthew, Mark, Luke,
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are names attributed by the church. They were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that we can identify. We have no original copies. We have no autograph copies. The names are tradition, but let's assume for a second that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were actually written by 4 eyewitnesses, even though we know they weren't. Does that prove that what they say is true?
the consistency of what they talk about is evidence
There
to
isn't
it being
consistency.
true.
There isn't consistency.
There's
There is not consistency. And even if they were consistent, that doesn't mean it's true, does it?
It doesn't mean it's true. It points towards evidence that it is more true than not.
I'm tired of you saying that it points towards evidence. There needs to be evidence, not pointing in the general vague, version of evidence where somebody can massage the truth. The reality is that the Gospels do not agree, which is why 3 of them are called the Synoptic Gospels, because they at least agree in part. And the 4th one, John, is not one of the Synoptic Gospels. But if you've ever gone in and tried to reconcile the Easter account, have you ever tried to do that?
or the birth account.
Yes, I've read the Easter account. I've read the Easter account several times.
Okay, which version of it's correct?
All of them have different perspectives on it. Each one that's written.
It's not perspectives. They're different in who went to the tomb. What was the stone rolled away when they got there, or did it roll away after? Was there somebody in the tomb or not? They disagree on functional details about everything about that. How do you reconcile that?
Were there no post-resurrection appearances, as in Mark, just run away afraid and tell no one? Or were there resurrection appearances post-resurrection?
When a significant event is happening to somebody in real time, and there's multiple people that witness it, they're all going to say different things that point to the same truth.
No.
So,
No. What the stone was either already rolled away when they got there, or it wasn't. Which one is true?
I don't know which one was true.
Cool. But different gospels say two. So the gospels say 2 different things, and you don't know which one is true. How could we tell which one is true?
In our time now, we can't.
Oh, why not? Isn't there a God that could fix this for us?
But I don't think it disrupts the credibility of the Gospels.
What credibility?
The credibility of the written accounts of Jesus.
I'm sorry. I only heard, I didn't hear anything for a little bit, and then I heard the credibility of the accounts of Jesus. You said there's no way for us to tell which of the resurrection narratives are correct. So how do we know that any of them are correct?
Because they do have a synchronization to them, and they're written as history. They're not like a story.
The fact that 4 people told the same story, the fact that 4 people to 3 people told a similar story doesn't mean that any part of the story is true. Why is it that the God of the universe, doing the most important thing, if it were true, this would be the most important thing, cannot give us sufficient evidence or even address the fact that the books that we still have now do not agree on what happened? Why is God such a weak ass fuck up that he can't keep the record straight for us? Because right now we have no way of knowing which of the accounts is true or if any of them are true. And your argument is, well, they're talking about the same thing, so that lends some credibility to the notion that it happened. That might be true if, let's say, me and Brian and Jimmy all saw a pig jump from one side of the road to the other, but it's not true for walking on water, raising the dead, water to wine, dying on the cross, the sun standing still in the sky, the temple veil ripping, the zombies getting up and marching on Jerusalem, and then being resurrected. None of those things are in the realm of, I can believe that because there's 3 people who we don't know and can't investigate who kind of said roughly similar things. Are you fucking kidding me? This is beyond ridiculous at this point.
Can I ask one question, then you can get to the next callers, because I don't want to take up all the time. Is there anything in the longevity of...
No.
I didn't hear the question.
I'll just answer it now. I think you cut it off at longevity. Is there longevity
Is there
No.
any in debates on the line, on the atheist experience, in all your conversations, is there any type of claim that somebody has made, or the evidences that they brought about the Gospels, not that God is real or the Gospels are true, but just things that they've talked about? Has any of it been interesting for you to investigate?
Yes.
Could I hear like one or two of those things?
No, because I don't remember which ones prompted my curiosity. But considering I've spent 20 years investigating these things and I didn't know everything at the start, there have been plenty of things that I've had to go and investigate and to see, is this going to be sufficient to warrant the claim? Where are we going to draw the line? There are plenty of things that have piqued my curiosity and sent me out to investigate, because I'm an obsessive learner. And even when I'm not doing these shows 2-3 times a week, I am reading and studying this stuff anytime I'm not messing with snakes or watching something on YouTube. But I can't tell you exactly what it was, because ultimately what I investigated still found that not only is there not sufficient evidence to conclude this, but for 20 years now, people have been calling in, offering what you're offering, which is, Christianity is unique. There's a lot of people, they might have got some stuff wrong, but at least they were kind of telling the same story. And that's why I believe it's true. Well, you have absolutely garbage standards of evidence and a garbage epistemology, because if you use the same justification for other claims, you will find yourself believing all kinds of things that aren't true and are mutually exclusive. You need better standards of evidence. It's fine to say, I'm curious about these claims of Christianity. I'm curious about, how did these Bible stories come about? What can I find? But when you realize, as you seem to have, that you have no way of telling what is true and what isn't true, then the only rational conclusion at that moment is to say, I cannot believe this yet. That's it.
Yeah, I still fully believe in Christianity and the Gospels, and I do claim they're true. I do.
Because you don't have good standards of evidence.
So if I did have good standards of evidence, that would prove that Christianity isn't true.
No. And this is what's wrong with the way you think entirely, Ryan. At no point did I say or suggest that having good standards of evidence would prove Christianity wasn't true. Having good standards of evidence would make it so that you could not accept that it was true. Christianity might be true. It could be proven some other time in some other way. But to date, there isn't sufficient evidence to warrant believing it. But the claims itself may be unfalsifiable. It may be impossible to ever demonstrate that Christianity is in fact false. But that's not a problem, because the burden of proof is on the people who are claiming it's true.
Fair point.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
Well, thank you for taking the call. Enjoyed.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoyed talking to you guys. I watched evidence. I was just going to say, I watched the show, and for the people who actually do engage in productive conversation, it's very interesting to watch. So I like what you guys talk about, and it's cool to hear the vast majority of perspectives. It's good.
Yeah. I really appreciate it, Ryan. There's a delay, and it's making all three of us talk over each other at the same time. But I appreciate the call. I'm going to let you go, and Brian will chime in, then we'll get some more callers. But take care.
Yeah, I am. That black and white kind of thinking there at the end is the problem in so many cases. If not mine. And it's if it doesn't work for me, it's absolutely disproven. Well, no, it's not disproven, but what are you warranted in believing? What is there? And for me, I have a standard. I would believe in Christianity tomorrow if Christians could do the things that Jesus said that they'd be able to do. I mean, if you could do supernatural things, if you could raise the dead, if you could gather 2 or more together and ask God for anything in Jesus' name and get it, I'd be on board, because I'd be pulling a friend in to get a PS5 tomorrow. I mean, that would be freaking awesome. Or ending world hunger. I might go bigger. But The fact that
At least do one
you've
nice
got,
thing.
yeah, right. Think of someone else for once in your life.
It's not all about you, Gohan.
Yeah.
It's I get it, and having calls with people like Ryan is great, and that actually worked pretty well despite the delay problems were obvious, because when I ask a question, that starts about a 5-second thing where they're hearing the question and then they got to start responding, which is it's actually like 2.5 seconds, so it's 5 seconds total. And in that time, if you jump in or I jump in, and by the way, there's a delay. I'm seeing a delay between me and the reflection of me, and I definitely have a delay between myself and Brian. And Amargan's back there in the booth. I pointed down the hall, but Amargan's not down the hall. But
here's it fixed. Why can't we focus some technology on getting this fixed so we're not delayed?
Really?
And we can, yeah, seriously.
No,
who's working on
great. The telephone system, we used to have a full duplex, and the only time it was a problem is when people called in with cell phones because they're bad at full duplex. But now we're doing everything voice over IP, and there are some systems that are better with less delay, but they don't necessarily allow the calls and the ability to mix stuff. We're looking at a bunch of different options, or I shouldn't say we. Jimmy is probably looking at a number of different options. But on the call with Ryan,
it's 11.
There are two. When I talked about the categories where there's something about personal experience, and then there's the other one where they give the arguments that they think should convince someone. Because, and I'm not going to call Ryan a liar or anything, but this notion that, I took a reasoned look at Christianity and I read the Gospels and they seemed different from all the other religions, and so I'm just convinced that they're true. I don't think that's what anybody, including Ryan, has truly done. In fact, I think what a lot of them have done is become convinced for bad reasons and then rationalize other reasons to make it feel more justified. And that's why when we say, what, is the truth of an idea impacted by the number of people who believe it or how strongly they believe it? The one and only correct answer to that is no. But in Ryan's case, the answer became, well, it means it should be investigated. Okay. Maybe it should be investigated because, we don't necessarily have time to investigate every, fairy tale woo-woo claim out there. And I guarantee you that none of us, just as a practical necessity, Ryan hasn't spent time looking into every other religious claim that's out there. Nobody has. Nobody could.
Right. For all we know, the true religion is believed by like 12 people somewhere in the Amazon.
Yeah. Who knows?
I mean, why not, right? Why not? God has his ways. He's mysterious. His ways are not our ways. Can't possibly understand it.
We got another caller here. Roy in Florida is a theist calling in with a question for us, and I'll let him ask you because I get asked this one quite frequently. So, Roy, welcome to the show. You're on with Matt and Mr. Deity.
Hey, Roy.
Thank you, Matt. Hello. It's a pleasure to be able to get to talk to you, especially Matt, since I've been listening to you for a while now, and I've listened to you on the Atheist Experience as well, and you've been a pretty good host. And I have something I'd like to ask you guys, especially Matt, is what in your opinion is the strongest argument you've seen for existence of God? And my second question is to Matt, if I can shit in your mouth.
Oh,
so wait, say that.
He wants to know if he can shit in my mouth.
That's a weird question. Is that a serious call?
No, there's no way it's a serious call at all.
How strange.
It's they hung up as soon as they asked. So, but let's do them the courtesy that they wouldn't do for us. And what do you personally find the most compelling or the least bad, I guess, argument for the existence of a God?
I don't believe in arguments in terms of things, in terms of establishing the ontology of a thing. Arguments just don't do it. There's a great video on YouTube by a channel called Sisyphus Redeemed, and I think it's called the Kalam cosmological fallacy, and it's fantastic. It's a philosopher talking about the history of arguments and how we've just been, our intuitions just suck, and our arguments are based so desperately on our intuitions, and the whole point of the scientific endeavor is to somehow get above our intuitions and our crappy brains. And when you realize that an argument can sound just so completely dead on right and be completely dead on wrong, I have no trust in an argument that you're never going to sell me on the fact that a being exists with an argument. If that being exists, demonstrate the existence of that being reliably, repeatably, to anyone, to everyone, so we can all cash in and find our way to those mansions we were talking about earlier. And you can get some sleep finally, in your mansion in the sky with its bed and bedrooms. Oh gosh, it all starts to sound so ridiculously stupid when you talk about it, the specifics. But I just don't find any of them compelling. I just don't.
I get it, and I'm in agreement in that I don't find any of them compelling. Generally, this ends up being more along the lines of what's the least bad of them, and honestly, it's such a low bar that it's why I was willing to just pass on the question, because I've had this question, I don't know how many hundreds of times over the years in interviews and everything else. And it's like, what's the least bad argument for God? And to me, and I'll happily tell you that the notion that we don't understand the origins of everything, and certainly a magical being capable of creating everything, is one potential explanation for everything. The problem is,
right,
yet nobody's ever demonstrated that a magical being capable of creating everything is even possible, let alone necessary or real or anything like that. And so the ones that go down that line of thought, that are like, oh, something can't come from nothing. Well, maybe there was never a nothing, and there's loads of problems there. But it's like, oh, we can't have an infinite regress. Yes, but that's only about us looking backwards and trying to count things back. Moving forwards, there's no infinite regress. There's just an infinite series of events. Well, if you couldn't get from the beginning to here, yes, that's true, because there is no beginning in an infinite series of events.
right.
But intuitively, it just feels like, to many people, especially when we are uncomfortable with not knowing the answer, why does anything even exist? Because that's what God wants. And it's why I used to talk about universe creating pixies or any number of things, because functionally they serve the same purpose as this God of the gaps for a gap in our knowledge about the origin of the universe. I would think that those are the most compelling, and yet on a scale of 1 to 100 compelling, I would put them at a 0.5, like less than 1% compelling.
Right.
Because the arguments are based on our admittedly flawed understanding of reality, our discomfort with not knowing, and our dubious ability to engage in speculation beyond our ability to test. And if we know we can't investigate that, we've got one universe that we know of. Until we find more universes, we don't even have a universe to compare this one to know what might be possible. It's all speculative.
Right. To me, the idea of some kind of deist God, I don't have a problem with. I don't see what the point is. He's not gonna be caring about us or communing with us or helping us out in any way. We're just left here. But that's the other problem, is this: the second you start getting into the specifics of what you mean by God, when you start involving the omni properties of the Judeo-Christian, I call him the tribal war god of Abraham. When you get into that kind of thing, then it all goes out the window for me, because there's one thing that is absolutely evident to me, and that is, if there is a God who created this mess, he is an absolute sadist. You can't be a good being. Good doesn't create. It's just, that's axiomatic to me. Good, all good. I think it was Aquinas who said, with an infinite good, where is there room for evil? And it just doesn't. It's talk about counterintuitive. That guy liked counterintuitive, so that he might enjoy that one. I just can't see it. Without our consent, we're put here into where people just suffer horrifically, and I think one of the biggest problems is people have no real understanding, at least in the first world now, of how much suffering has existed throughout time, not just for us, for humans, but for all hominin species who have now gone extinct. What was the freaking point of all of their suffering? And we haven't even gotten into the animals, for 800 million years who've just been here. So what? So that God can use this process to get to us? And then why would you ever imagine that we're the end point of this creation? It's so silly. How do you know that God didn't create this universe for a species that evolved in another galaxy, who knows how far away, 3 billion years ago, and we're just collateral damage from the natural processes? It's just so silly. It's all so silly.
It's also strange when you really get in, because some Christian apologists, we got two more theist callers I'm going to get to shortly. So Gary will be up in just a minute, and then Patty after that. But if you talk to some Christian apologists, they'll be like, well, God is perfect, but he seeded, CED, some of that perfection to allow us space to exist and not be perfect. And so the bad things are our doing and our failing. The problem is, take a look at the world. Nobody lives without some other living thing dying. I don't care what you eat. You are eating something else that was alive, be it plant or animal. And when you look at the diversity of animal life on the planet, and you can look at the differences in the teeth and the digestive system, if God had planned for this place to be perfect, why would anything have a digestive system? Why would it need teeth? Why would God design it so that you must kill something else to live? You can't just blame that on the fall, unless prior to the fall, you had something that looked like a tiger, but it wasn't a tiger. And it didn't, not like we know it now. And then when Adam and Eve sinned, God had to go through and change the physiology of every animal everywhere to make it so that now it's a dog eat dog or Haitians eat cat world, to go with these Springfield, Ohio stuff.
That's fun.
And also, God changed physics, because evidently prior to the great flood that we know couldn't have happened because there's not enough water to make it so, evidently light didn't refract through rain droplets and create a rainbow, because that's God's sign that he'll never flood the earth again. And that means that physics work differently, because you couldn't have seen a rainbow before then, or at least that's one proposal. All right. Well,
then you've got the fact that he knew all of was going to happen. I mean, this is another thing that people don't really think about. He knew all of this. He knew that we were going to be this is what I don't understand. I would love to have a theist answer this to me. God knew that not only that he was going to create me, but that he was going to create me in the way he did, specifically, right? My genes and all of that kind of stuff. And he knew that because he created me the way he did, I would do X, Y, and Z. And he worked his infinite plan. Did I have free will in his brain, in his mind before that, to make all those choices that I made before I was instantiated as a human being with the genes that I have and all of that? It's ridiculous. It's
a threefold problem. If God created the universe, could have created a different universe, and knew everything that would happen in either, that means that God specifically created the universe in which I started off, being raised in a Southern Baptist environment, and now I'm an outspoken atheist. That means God did the deciding for me. Now, I
Right.
don't think we have
Absolutely.
free will in any useful sense anyway, but
I don't either. Yes, I'm
under
with
the
you.
God model of most versions of Christianity and some others, the gods of classical theism, nobody's got free will. But maybe Gary's calling from Pennsylvania, prone to him. Gary's a theist who wants to talk about the nature of salvation. So, hey, Gary, how are you? You're on with Matt and Mr. Deity.
Hi, Gary.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, I just want to thank you, Matt. If I may, I'd like to mention a few elements and present them. I'd like to get your perspective, and I do hope it's compelling because you have some juicy questions, and I'd love to, as best as I can, talk to you about them. But I'd like to hope that we can evolve the way we have discourse with the Christian arguments that God exists. Specifically, for example, a more accurate explanation of some of the Bible stories you presented, one of which is the resurrection. I'm so thankful you brought it up because I never knew there was a contradiction. So that's why I wanted to thank you. Your personal diligence, which exceeds most Christians in their Bible study, it kind of bears out the glaring lack of, how do I say it, diligence. And so it's so glaring when you have these questions.
I've reached my limit for fawning from the other side right now. I just want to talk to you about salvation. What is it? How do we get it? How do you know?
Right. So I heard you mention God loves you and God has a wonderful plan for you. Actually, there are Bible verses that present as if God loves everyone and wants them all to come to repentance. But there's also verses in the Bible that will say things like, many are called, few are chosen. There are Jews inwardly, and I've not come for all, but for the lost sheep of Israel. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that the Bible has a dichotomy, and so many denominations have different presentations, but there is a definitive value. So if you're presenting, why would God do this, and you present a doctrine that's not as accurate, some theists will be kind of perplexed to say, well, that's not an accurate depiction of what the Bible actually teaches.
Okay. We're getting dangerously close to co-host syndrome here, Gary. I don't need a lecture on the fact that the Bible has a number of different models and that there are people who think that or non-believers go to hell, or there's others who think that annihilation theory is correct. You called in to talk about the nature of true salvation. I want to know, what do you think is true salvation? What are we being saved from and to? And how do you know that that whatever you think is true?
Right. True salvation is God choosing individuals throughout the fabric of the timeline of the Bible by election. So no one can earn salvation. It's a lottery system based on what we read. A lot is cast into the lap, like the seeds cast.
What are they being saved? What are they being saved from and to?
They're being saved from death. For the wages of sin is death. It's not a burning, fiery, torturous hell. It's the ability to continue on forever.
How do you know that God chooses? How do you know that God chooses the individuals that He's going to save, irrespective of anything they do?
Because the scriptures tell us that His purpose and grace began before the world was formed, and before we were formed, He knew us, and He elected us.
Which scripture? The one that has multiple views that you've already acknowledged on salvation?
And that's my point. It's
no. Gary, stop. You don't get to do and that's my point. You've argued that you have the understanding of true salvation, and that true salvation, despite the fact that there are several different models one could build out of the Bible, you have picked one of those and are claiming that it's true. And we haven't even established that anything in the Bible about salvation is remotely true. What is your criteria for determining what is the criteria that you use to determine which proposed soteriology is correct?
So there's a biblical precept called line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. That's in the Bible. So if I'd like to learn about a specific issue, let's say salvation, I have to find every reference in the Bible and compare it with each one. And when there's a
Why?
preponderance of evidence on one
Why are we
side,
looking at the Bible at all?
because you just asked me.
No. You're calling in to tell me about the nature of true salvation, and you are pointing to the
Yeah.
Bible, and you are pointing to a specific interpretation of some passage in the Bible. And my question is, why are we looking to the Bible at all?
Because the Bible has permeated through our society. If you go to,
So is the
you look at
Quran,
the
so is
7-day
Harry
work
Potter
week,
and the Goblet of Fire. I'm asking, you say that you know the true path, the truth about salvation, and you're getting it
yeah,
from the Bible. Why should we care what the Bible says about salvation?
I'm so glad you asked that great question. And
I've
that's
asked it
what I'm
5
mentioning.
fucking times already, and thousands of times over the years. Sorry.
So the nature of salvation is not for everyone. So the
Gary,
understanding that
why
I've
are
learned,
we? What, Gary? Why are you going to the Bible to learn about salvation?
because that's what you guys were talking about.
No,
That's why I
Gary.
called in, because
No,
the
Gary.
gentleman
No,
kindly said
Gary. Listen
he
to
was
me
perplexed
carefully,
about.
Gary, because you are on my last fucking nerve with this shit. You called in to tell us that you know the true nature of true salvation. And when I asked you about it,
Yes.
you pointed to a particular understanding from the Bible. My question, and this is the last time I'm going to ask it, why should we be looking at the Bible to find out about true salvation?
Because that's the only source where this salvation is offered.
Okay. Goodbye, Gary.
Thank you.
Do you know why I'm saying goodbye?
You're smarter than me. Please go ahead. I'm slow.
Well, it has nothing to do with that. If a Muslim called in and told me that they had the true version of salvation, and they said, what we got to do is we got to read the Quran, would you find that compelling or even a remotely good answer?
No.
No. And if I asked the Muslim, why would we go to the Quran? And they gave your answer, because that's the book where this model exists, which is your answer. Would you find that compelling?
No. But I'm not saying you have
Well,
to
you
read
need
the
to go
Bible.
find something. You need to go find something that should be compelling and call back with that.
Well, it's not supposed to compel you. It's just trying to lay out an understanding.
It's not supposed to compel me. You think that there's a true salvation and that you've found it. And when somebody asks you how you know, you're going to duck and say it's not supposed to compel you. Isn't it your job under 1 Peter 3:15 to be prepared at all times to give the reason for the faith that's within you? Isn't it your job to be out there on the Great Commission? Isn't it your job to be a conduit for the Holy Spirit to compel people?
No, we're not supposed to compel. We're supposed to be.
You are not supposed to be. You are saying you're not supposed to be. You're saying you're not supposed to be a conduit for the Holy Spirit to compel lost people to salvation.
No, see.
Then why do you ignore that part of the
saving,
Bible?
Not me.
Why do you ignore that part of the Bible and only pay attention to the part that's convenient for you?
Because the nature of preaching the gospel is not to compel. That's why there's so many false people who think they're saved and they're not. Because
it is to compel. It is to compel. I'm sorry. It is to compel. Do you even know what the definition of compel is?
I would have to look at the Greek word and see how it's used, but that's exactly what I was talking about.
What Greek word?
The whole God loves you and has a wonderful
I didn't use a Greek word.
Not accurate.
I didn't use a Greek word. I used compel.
You said the word compel. Is that from the Bible?
I don't know what made you think that that was Greek, but compel.
Well, the Bible is written in Greek and Hebrew, so that's my reference point.
The word fucking, oh my God.
I'm supposed to.
When I say compel, I'm not quoting the Bible.
Okay.
You have no clue at all what you're talking about, Gary. You are in deep waters well over your head. To compel means to convince someone of the truth.
Yeah.
So
we don't convince. That's my point. We're not supposed to convince.
Wow, you're not
Bible
even
does
fucking
that.
listening.
God
I didn't
does that.
say you. I didn't say you were convincing. I said you are to act as a conduit for the Holy Spirit, so that the Holy Spirit can convict and convince and compel.
Yes. If the person is not pushing back or resisting, which I believe you are, you're not really.
Okay,
You're not
so
really
now
listening.
you're accusing me of being dishonest. So your fucked up ass can sit on mute while I lecture you about how to go read Romans. First of all, you know what Romans says? Oh, yeah, that's right. You can't answer me because you're muted. But in Romans 1, verses 20 and 21, it says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." That is an argument for compulsion, that God is evident and therefore believers are without excuse. When the Bible commands you to go ye therefore unto the world, unto all nations, preaching the gospel, the purpose of that is for the Holy Spirit to use you to convict and compel sinners so that they might follow the path that you think God has elected them for. But you don't know any of that.
I would agree with you that we are to preach the gospel, but the conviction through a fiery sermon of this terrible hell is actually not the way God wants us to be.
Gary,
to preach the gospel.
Gary, you're done talking forever. Well, no, not forever. I don't want to overreact. I don't know why you can't be honest. I didn't say anything at all like what you just described. Not at all. I talked about you being a conduit for the Holy Spirit, not that you were compelling anybody, but that God would compel and convict and convince. Why is it that you accuse me of being a resistant believer, pretending that you know my mind better than I do, pretending you know my mind better than God does, and you cannot be honest when addressing what I've actually said? Why are those two things so problematic for you?
I don't read your mind, but you're definitely angry and cursing. I would consider that a resistance.
Gary, why don't you lick my asshole? How you like that? What does that have to do with whether or not I'm resistant to belief? I am a non-resistant non-believer. I've done multiple videos on this. When you say that you don't believe me, you're saying I'm a liar. You're saying you are convinced that I am not a non-resistant non-believer. And your proof of that is that I said fuck or lick my ass. How does me saying fuck or lick my ass in any way demonstrate that I am opposed to belief in a God?
None. The
None at
variation
all.
that
That's
you're cutting
right.
me off, not allowing me to speak, is the resistance.
Oh, now you're a fucking liar, Gary. We've let you speak. We were not preventing you from speaking. We did not cut you off. We answered your objections. And what did you do? You said that you don't believe that I'm a non-resistant non-believer. So you can apologize right now and retract it, or you can be banned from the show. Which is it? I don't care. I no longer care, Gary, because we're here to have good conversations with people. And you called in to say that you know the true salvation, but you had no way of demonstrating it. You called to say you had the true salvation and you got it from the Bible, while acknowledging that the Bible has multiple views on salvation that many will disagree with you. And then you acknowledge you have no way of demonstrating or proving any of this, but you're still convinced that you got it right. And you're convinced that I'm just too stubborn, too skeptical, too stuck, too definitely not interested in a God belief, that I'm resistant. So you didn't demonstrate any kind of sound epistemology at all. You didn't demonstrate any understanding of scripture. You didn't even demonstrate an understanding of the word compel. And instead, you decided that it would be a good idea to suggest that I'm the one being dishonest in conversation. I'm sitting here asking you, why do you believe and why should we believe? And you're like, well, it would convince you if you weren't so stubborn. It would convince you if you weren't dishonest. Go fuck yourself, Gary. And then you can come back and lick my ass.
As we all know from The Exorcist, the power of Christ compels you. So he's not he's compelling people. I mean, Max von Sydow showed us that. We should all know that by now. That makes perfect sense. That's amazing. I love that. I love that he went to. There are all kinds of these different views of salvation, but I've got the one. He's somehow figured it, or God's revealed it to him. I mean, he should start his own religion. Really, I mean, he could make a fortune. Selling.
It's strange to me that the people who are most cocksure that they have the truth are the ones who have the least understanding of how one would go about demonstrating the truth.
Right.
You got people saying, oh, well, a lot of people believed. Yep. And a lot of people believed other stuff, and more people believed other stuff, as Brian pointed out.
Right.
It's frustrating. All right. We have one final call for today. And then some super chats. And this one is great. This is Patty calling from California, pronouns are she, her, and wants to talk about eschatology. So that's end time stuff. That's end of the world stuff. So Patty, what's going on?
Hi, Patty.
Hey, you guys. How are you doing?
Great.
Not too bad.
Maybe I should turn my TV off because there's a few seconds in a delay.
Yeah. There's going to be a delay even just on the phone, and it's going to be a little annoying. So I appreciate the patience.
Are you the gentleman with the mustache? I just turned my TV off, so I can't see you now.
Technically, both of us have mustaches, and
oh, okay. You're both attractive,
I'm the
so I'll
bald
say
guy.
the gentleman with the darker hair.
Okay. Well, Brian's hair is white, and my hair is non-existent. So I guess mine's darker.
Okay. You know a lot about the Bible.
Well, yeah, I became a Christian at the age of 5 and was active in the church and was going to be a minister, and then found my way out.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that part because.
Oh, I'm not.
So I am. Because I am a Christian, and I got saved 4 years ago through a kind of an icky situation, and it wouldn't be beneficial to really talk about. And to hear somebody that knows as much about the Bible, and I've only been listening for about a half an hour. Okay. So I missed however long you guys have been doing this, and you said more in the last half hour than I've heard in church. Our churches are so broken, and it's really sad because there's so many people that are broken. I'm broken, but I know it, and so I can bring my brokenness to God, to Jesus. But there's so many churches that are run by the people that want to hear that. Well, the church is the body of Christ, as you know. I don't know about your audience. And there's so many shepherds.
I know it's called
pastors.
that. I don't think churches are a body of anything. I don't think Christianity is real. I don't think there's a God. I think.
What happened? May I ask, or is that too personal? Should I not ask? I don't want to
ask what.
I don't want to get you guys angry. I don't want to get you guys angry, and Well, yeah. Is that okay to ask what happened?
I set out to be the best Christian I could be, and I set out to convince my roommate that I was right, that Jesus was God, and that he was wrong, in his atheism. And in the process, I discovered that not only is Christianity and seemingly every other religion on the planet built on incredibly flawed reasoning, but a complete dearth of evidence. And so in the attempt to be the best Christian I could be, I got 0 answers from God. Every single argument for God has proven to be fallacious or unsupported by good evidence. And so I cannot believe something if there's not an evidential warrant. What convinced you there's a God?
Yes. So, wow. So I had a pretty bad thing happen, and so I grew up as a Christian. And then when my dad died, who was just like the best dad that you can imagine. I cursed God, and I hated God, and I hated Christians, and I got into the occult, and for 40 years, and I didn't worship Satan, okay, but I dabbled, and I dabbled too much. It's not something that you dabble in. And so I always had a Ouija board.
What can happen?
Well, I can tell you one experience that I had. So I don't do drugs now, but I did do drugs then. And I went over to, I was with a friend that I was going to school with, and I wanted to, score some marijuana. And she said her boyfriend would be at these people's house. And my first name isn't Patty. My first name is really a difficult name. And that's important in the story. And so we went over to these, and I hope it's okay that I'm talking about this off topic kind of thing. But we went over to these people's house. I've never knew them. And we walk in, and, I'm there to get drugs. So, typically don't get introduced to, like, oh, this is so-and-so. And so there was a girl, and I'm not kidding. It was like right out of a movie. And she was playing with a Ouija board, right? And as a Christian, I grew up, and it's like, that's a bad thing. It's just, and that from your Christian roots. That's just like
what I know.
Right?
What I know is that there's something called the ideomotor reflex, and that Ouija boards have been proven easily and simply to not be anything at all remotely supernatural. They don't do anything. And if you blindfold the participants and turn the Ouija board upside down, they still move the planchette around just like they would when it was face up. There's nothing to it. It's not anything at all. It's people psychologically moving it around.
So this is my experience. And like I said, my first name is very difficult. And I wasn't introduced. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. That was a bad joke. Keep going.
Oh, okay. And so I saw the Ouija board, and the girl said, "Do you want to play?" And my first reaction was no, because that's, even though I wasn't a Christian at the time, that was just like based from when I was a kid. And then I said yes, because one of my best friends was in a freak automobile accident. About a year before. And so we would have been 21 that year, and she was killed, and her name's Julie. And anyway, so I sat down, and she said some prayer, and my attitude is like, this is just bullshit. And then she starts calling, and then and there was no introduction, but let's say there was, even though there wasn't. Julie called me Patty, which is the name I gave you because it's just easier than my first name. And so spelled out the names Patty. And then after that, it spelled out my first name, which I've had I'm 62 years old, and I've had for a very long time. And most people can't even pronounce my name on the first shot if they read it, much less spell it.
Were your Patty, were your hands on the planchette?
Yes.
Congratulations on spelling your own name.
I don't know that I did.
Yeah, I know you don't know that you did.
I don't know that I did.
I know that you don't know that you did because you haven't bothered to look into the ideomotor reflex, and you haven't bothered to look into the science that's been done to study things like Ouija boards. It's not happening consciously. It's not like you went, oh, let me spell my name and Julie's name. It's happening subconsciously.
Well, then how can you describe a very, very cold wind, like the coldest wind that you could possibly imagine, coming up and hitting you when the windows are closed, the doors are closed, and everybody right there felt that? This girl's mom grabbed me and was like,
let's say for example that I have no explanation for the cold wind. So what?
Okay. But it existed.
What does it prove? What does it prove?
For me, it proves that something came through that board. That's what it proves to me.
Then you have incredibly bad standards of evidence, because the fact that you were messing around with something and were in a psychological state where you thought it was potentially evil and you thought it was potentially problematic, and then you went ahead and did it anyway, changes your psychology to the point where anything that you experience, whether it would have been a cold wind, a hot wind, no wind, whatever, it would have all affirmed what you suspected. You have no way of demonstrating what happened, or that it was supernatural at all.
What I'll do is I'll give that to you, and that's fine, because for me, I don't want to argue, and for me, and I don't think you do either. Show. And I think, well, I know that's okay though. That's okay. I don't mind if you need to say something. I don't mind. I'm just here to talk about eschatology. Okay. And I just really encourage you, especially given your background, I just really encourage you to I don't know how much you know about it, but for the audience, eschatology is the study of biblical prophecy, and all the biblical prophecies in the Old Testament have come true. You can look to Isaiah. You can look to Isaiah.
Patty,
let me give you one. Let me just give you one. Let me give you one.
Patty, stop talking. Eschatology is not the study of prophecy. Eschatology is a study of end time. It is the study of end times.
Okay, biblical prophecy, end times. Okay, Isaiah 52:14 isn't.
Hang on. I want to make sure we're clear because somebody's going to jump in. There is a usage of eschatology where it can relate to prophecies, specifically prophecies about end time, but it's not just the general study of any prophecy. That's the only reason I wanted to offer the correction. Continue.
Okay. That's fine. So in Isaiah 52, 14, it starts talking about, and it basically outlines the coming of Jesus and what he's going to endure. It talks about things like, it doesn't?
Nope.
I can read it to you.
You can read it to me all you want, but you do realize that the Jews, who are the authors and keepers of Isaiah and the prophecy, don't think that that's talking about Jesus, right?
But if you read it, it's very clear.
No. The thing
is,
even
if you read Genesis 3:15.
Oh my God. Never mind. You're not interested in learning.
No,
anything.
Go ahead.
You're interested.
No, I am.
You're
I
not
am. Because I want to stay on your show.
No, you're not interested in learning. You're interested in talking.
I apologize.
Okay. So Isaiah 52 will say, you think that predicts Jesus. Why? Do you have any evidence that Jesus actually existed? Do you have any evidence that anything said about Jesus in the Bible is true?
So in terms of eschatology, some people that are much, much smarter than I am, I'm a baby Christian.
The question I asked was about whether or not.
So what I want to do is I want to direct you.
Okay.
I want to direct you.
Like I said, you're clearly not interested in fucking learning.
Wow. No, I think you aren't, because I'm trying to direct you to some really good sources. And one source is a gentleman by the name of Chuck.
Shut your pie hole.
Wow.
Do you know more about this stuff than I do?
I'm trying to. Have you heard of Chuck Missler?
Do you know more about this stuff than I do?
Have you heard of Chuck Missler?
Do you know more about this stuff than I do?
I'm trying to educate
you. Do you know more about this stuff than I do? I'm just
trying to be helpful.
Do you know more about this stuff than I do?
Why are you so angry?
Do you know more about this?
Because you
won't answer the fucking question. Why won't you answer the question?
I don't know why.
Why won't you answer the fucking question, Patty? Why won't you answer the question, Patty? Here, I'm going to mute you. I want you to understand this. I've done this for 20 fucking years. You might know more about it than I do. But we need to establish that because you're calling in to teach me. And I'm the one that's sitting here pointing out your fallacies in that Isaiah 52 and the other passages that you think affirm Isaiah 52 are all part of the same collection of books and do not have evidence to support them. When I asked you what evidence you had, you refused to answer the question. That's dishonest as fuck. When I asked if you knew more about this than I did, you refused to answer the question. You were sitting there trying to pretend like I'm preventing you from saying what you need to say because I'm scared of it. But you won't answer the questions about evidence. So, first question, do you know more about this than I do? And second question,
You know more about it than I do.
Okay. The next question is that I asked before. The passage in Isaiah that you think points to Jesus, do any of the facts about Jesus in the New Testament, can you demonstrate that any of them are true?
So what I can do as one person to another person is just let you know some of my teachers. And one of my teachers is Chuck Missler.
No, I'm going to mute you again. I don't need to hear about Chuck. These are people that, granted, I haven't debated Chuck. I asked a specific question. I'm going to ask it again. Do you have any evidence for any of the claims about Jesus? Yes or no? You ran away, Patty. Patty hung up and ran away. I don't need you to call to tell me how you are a suck up to Chuck Missler or Greg Bonson or whichever apologist you found compelling, because you don't understand the basics of epistemology, the basics of what do we need to be confident that this claim is true. To say, hey, there's these passages in Isaiah that you think are about the Messiah, even though Jews don't necessarily think those are about the Messiah. And here are things that Jesus supposedly did. You can't demonstrate that Jesus existed, that he did any of those things, that he said any of those things, that he fulfilled any of those prophecies. You are using the claim, one claim, to back up another claim that doesn't even mean what you think it does. I don't care how much you've been listening to Chuck Missler. You don't understand the ideomotor reflex. You don't understand how Ouija boards work. You don't understand a number of things, and that's fine. I didn't either. Nobody did at some point. But the difference is I'm an obsessive learner, and I'd rather be right than wrong. You would rather be comforted than right. That's the problem. I'm sorry, Brian, you didn't even get to get in on that. It was just...
That's okay. It's kind of wacky. There's really only one end times prophecy that matters to me, and that is there are some of you here that will not taste death before he sees the Son of Man returning in his glory. Didn't happen.
People are living in Wakanda. They're still alive in Wakanda.
Is that where they went? Oh,
it's funny that
are they making the?
Are they back in the what?
Are they the ones making the vibranium, like with the shield, and all of that kind of?
Yes.
That's no to me. Wow, you've opened my eyes.
So it's funny that Patty didn't want us to get mad. And then Patty did the one thing that's guaranteed to piss me off, which is to make me repeat myself over and over with a question that you won't answer while accusing me of being the problem.
Right.
I let Patty tell her story. I was really worried when she broke down because, it's incredibly troubling, to remember back so many years in the past. And if you're still affected, I'm terribly sorry that she lost a friend. And I'm terribly sorry that she and somebody else exploited her own grief with a Ouija board.
Right.
But the notion that Jesus fulfilled the Isaiah 52 prophecy is like saying, the waiter fulfilled my prophecy for a medium rare steak by bringing me a medium rare steak. When the people out there saying, hey, we need somebody who fits this role, you're going to find somebody who fits that role.
Right. Especially when you're writing about it, and you can write anything. Joseph Smith did the same kind of thing, where he wrote prophecies into the Book of Mormon, which prophesied about him that he could then fulfill. It's circular and backwards, and I mean that the gospel writers knew the prophecies, So they could just say, okay, well, we need Jesus needs to be born in Bethlehem. In fact, I would say that the birth stories are pure evidence of them saying, "Oh, we got to make this fit," and then coming up with the most just bass-backwards way of getting Jesus and Joseph, or I'm sorry, Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem, but with a census where everybody has to return to ancestral homeland from 1,000 years ago, which never ever happened.
Never. It's ridiculous. We not only that, not only did they invent a magical census. If you read through the Gospel of Mark, and I'd recommend talking to David Fitzgerald or Richard Carrier or Bart Ehrman or any number of people who actually study the New Testament. The author of the Gospel of Matthew invented prophecy for Jesus to fulfill that does not even exist. Nobody's been able to find it in the Old Testament. It's and he did this so that it would be fulfilled what the prophets said when they said this here, and it doesn't exist. So we have lost prophet. He fulfilled. Jesus is so fucking awesome. He fulfilled prophecy we didn't even know about. I mean, that's the way to spin that.
Joseph Smith has a prophecy of Civil War starting in South Carolina. 30 years, maybe not 30, maybe 25 years before the Civil War started. And if you look at the time of what was going on, you would say, well, if we're going to have a civil war, it's probably going to start in South Carolina. There's no way you can connect the two in any meaningful way. If you know the circumstances of what was going on, he was reading the tea leaves at the time, and it just so happened in dumb luck that what he prophesied, it didn't nail it, but there's enough there to make, Mormons, I used to believe, oh, wow, he really did. He nailed well, when you really look into it, no, he didn't. Anyone could have.
Really looked into it. There's no such thing as Reformed Egyptian either. But
exactly. Yes, thank you.
So we're up to the super chat portion of the show. We'll take turns reading these. I'll read the first one, then Brian can read the second one. Okay. We're going to read all of them that are over $10. If you get your super chats in now, if you have specific questions for Brian, particularly related to Mr. Mr. Deity and stuff like that, be a great time to get those in. But $10 from Greg Murkowski. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Arden, everyone at the line, and everyone watching. Thank you so much, Greg.
Yay, Greg. Awesome. From Tammy B. Not much to say, but keep up the great content.
Oh, thanks so much, Tammy. $10 from Eddie Anunson. And I probably butchered that. Sorry. Happy Thanksgiving. I feel terrible for students in Oklahoma and hope the education situation there and elsewhere doesn't get much worse. You're in luck. It can't get much worse. They're like number 48 on 50, so they'll get a little bit worse. Go duck yourself, Jimmy, and gnash your teeth. Oh, that's great. Somebody called in on Sunday when Seth and I were on, and my apologies in advance. I think we should not have let that person go on nearly as long as we did. It's very difficult doing shows like this when you get sincere believers calling in with things that sound like someone's off their medication, and then you get people calling in who seem to actually be off their medication. And I just want them to get help. I'm not here to mock anybody. But this individual was either a troll of epic proportions or had a tenuous grasp on reality, more so than just, I happen to believe in a God type thing. So he called me Allah and told me to gnash my teeth. But thanks so much for that.
This is from Reverend Nate. Oh, wow. Matt, I wanted your thoughts on navigating secular humanist values while also serving in the military. I'm on 17 years of service, Canada, and starting to question some things,
Well, I don't know what to tell you with regard to Canada, but I would actually, there's the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers. I don't know if I think it only applies to the U.S. military. I don't know if they have a Canada branch, but it might be worth reaching out to them, Nate, and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing something similar, or I'd like to know if there's something similar for military members outside of the United States. They may be able to give you advice. They may want maybe like, hey, we got nothing to do with it. There were so many people that emailed back when I was president of another organization, and they'd email asking, hey, how can we better do this? How can we better do that? And how can we do it in, Zimbabwe? And I'm like, I don't have the first, I can point at Zimbabwe on a map, maybe 9 out of 10 times, but I don't know anything about your laws or how to do it. And so I would start by reaching out to the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers to see if they know. And somebody already linked it in chat. It's militaryatheists.org.
Do we now have secular reverends, for lack of a better word, in the U.S. military?
No, not really that I know of. I know there are, there was a humanist chaplain, and there was a push to get humanist chaplains, but I don't know the current status of that.
Okay.
I will say
Just
that a good chunk of the chaplain corps in the Navy, when I was in there, they water down the default religions so much that it's more milk toast than a Unitarian Universalist thing.
Right.
And that's why while I was in the Navy, I was in for 8.5 years, and I was a believer for all of it. Although at some point I changed my dog tags from Baptist to no religious preference. And I didn't attend church while I was in the Navy because it wasn't church. It was for somebody raised in a Southern Baptist environment.
Right.
This was some kind of unrecognizable heresy, and so I just didn't go. I was a Bible believer, not a Jesus loves everybody and he loves the gays and he loves everybody and it's all going to be good and you're all going to go to heaven eventually. No, that's not what the Bible said, and that's not what I believed. So there's no way I was going to go to those services.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Oh, this is me. $10 from his Zotness. Hello, Mr. D. Hello, Mr. Z.
Oh, from Etienne. Again, I have a childhood friend who grew up non-religious and as an adult converted to Mormonism. Oh my gosh. I asked him why, and he said because of existential dread of not believing in an afterlife. Wild AF. Yeah, no, I think that's probably one of the most honest answers you will ever get. I think dread and fear and existential angst is probably number one, other than just believe. There are 3 kinds of believers and non-believers. There's the habitual believer. There's the philosophical believer, and oh my gosh, I can't think of the third one. The habitual believer, philosophical believer. Oh shoot, I can't remember. Maybe the fearful believer. I can't remember the thing, but I think fear is a big one. If you're afraid of either not existing, which I don't get. I mean, I don't understand that. I didn't exist before. It didn't bother me. I'm not going to exist again. Bother me. But if you do believe that there's something after, and you better get right with it, or else, that's, a lot of people grew up with that. I didn't think that's one of the things that I'm really thankful for in terms of Mormonism, because Mormonism doesn't really have a hell. They have 3 heavens. And, you can go to the Big Lots or the Nordstrom of heavens, but there's one in between, maybe the Macy's. I don't know. But I never grew up with that fear, but I did have existential angst. And when I left Mormonism, it's more of the idea that everything's going to end at some point. There's not going to be any. There's not going to be any, Louis Armstrong or any of the things that I love, Michael Franks or great movies, or that's all going to go away. That's terrifying. And I actually had a hard time sleeping for probably about 2 years until I talked to a Buddhist friend who about the ego death and had me because I would lay down in bed and I would start thinking of this and I would fall into Nietzsche's abyss, and it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. I would have to get up and do something like play video games or something until I was so tired I couldn't do anything but fall asleep. And then I would sleep for 4 hours. That happened to me for 2 years, and I was trying to regain my faith this whole time and get back to it, and I just couldn't. And then he said to me, "You got to sit with that shit. You just got to sit with it. Next time it comes up, don't run, don't go downstairs, don't play your games. Just make peace with it and let it all wash over you." And I did that one time, and that's all it took. And I don't know that would work for anybody else, but it worked for me. And I've never feared any of it again. And in fact, I find my present views the most. I have a lot of joy in life because I do appreciate this life so much and everything about it, every little thing, especially living at this time in this place with all this amazing stuff. And if you know anything about history, oh my gosh, we're so lucky. We're so incredibly lucky to be living when we do and having the things
until
that
recently, I would have said we're living in the best of all possible times. And now I'm not convinced.
Yeah. But it's still pretty. We'll see how it goes in the next 4 years.
Yeah. I never suffered from this sort of existential dread. And when I found my way, it was a good year and a half of serious study before I kind of found my way out. I started just trying to, let me figure out how to convince my atheist roommate because, I didn't want to get to heaven and have God say, "Hey, why does this guy who you love like a brother, why is he burning in hell? Why didn't you do what you're supposed to do?"
Right.
So I tried to.
Right.
And once I found my way out, there was zero existential dread. There was I have no concern at all about not existing. As a matter of fact, I view my future non-existent as a comfort now, not then. I won't be comfortable then because I won't be. But the notion that life ends is what gives it value. A forever life, each moment of it is infinitesimally, has virtually no value.
Yes.
But the other thing is, I got nothing to be afraid of. And even if I'm wrong, like I think the notion of a soul is the most obviously dead concept. I love saying that. I've said it thousands of times now. It's ridiculous to think that there's some sort of me that transcends me and can go off to fantasy land afterwards. It's just weird. Especially when everything about me and my personality is an identifiable, alterable part of my brain. We can change my memories, my preferences, when I'm horny, when I'm hungry, what I'm afraid of, who I like, what my politics are. We can change all of those with actual physical manipulation in my brain.
Right.
What room is left for a soul? And once that hit me, which may have been my equivalent of sitting with it kind of the way you did, but I just kind of, by the time I found my way off, I had wrestled with this idea of an afterlife and death to the point where I was mad that religion has done such a bad job of teaching us how to deal with both life and death. Like we got one life, we're all going to die. And religion absolutely pollutes that to where we are terrible at dealing with death. And in part because we're terrible with dealing with death, we are also terrible with dealing with life and all kinds of, hey, it's not psychology. You've got a demon. You need an exorcism. We have shit on the brain for the entirety of human existence. And it's the only reason that we can.
Right.
Anyway. I think this is probably me. $10 for Monkey at Typewriter. Hey, Gohan, you're a shit brother and I'd freeze you out too. Also, you can't say, I don't understand how pronouns work, and then say you're using the wrong pronouns a minute later, you dishonest fuck. Absolutely. That is exactly right.
Oh. And we got that from a monkey at a typewriter. Here's another monkey at typewriter. Also, I've never been religious. I don't know what it's like to be religious. Can I start shitting on Christians because I don't understand? Good one. Asking for someone with a DBZ pseudonym.
Yeah. That's Dragon Ball Z. I got that reference. Yeah. I probably wouldn't have, a while ago, but $20 from Heisenberg. Hey guys, so mad. Is there a no you're done t-shirt and where can I get one? Well, stay tuned.
No, you're done.
There's not yet, but there's going to be.
Where can we get our blue meth from you? From Funny Moppy, one of the biggest reasons my parents are Christian is they believe the devil and demons are real. They've seen possessed people in church. Therefore, if real, God is real. And what I love about the whole devil thing, and I bring this up in my videos quite frequently, is if you do open your mind to this idea of the supernatural and then add in that there is a very powerful being whose job it is to deceive us, it really screws with your epistemology, no matter what epistemology you have, because always is Satan could have risen Jesus from the dead to foster 2,000 years of war and hatred against homosexuals and trans people and you name it. There's so much evil that Satan could do just by raising Jesus from the dead and starting Christianity. How do we know that that's not what happened? I mean, maybe Jesus really did rise, but it tells you nothing if there is this being out there who's powerful and can do all these things.
I'm gonna have you read this next one as well while I jot down a note.
From Wilson. If I was an omni being, no child would ever suffer. I am so with you on this one. No life would ever suffer. With the snap of my fingers. Want to talk morals? I have a dog back here. Well, you can't see her anymore, but she was here. She's nearly 16 years old, and we've had her. Amy and I got her when she was, I think, 12 weeks old. Nothing bad has ever happened to this dog. This dog has had nothing but the best of lives. And we actually do have a relationship. When she can no longer hear, or she sees very little, maybe a little bit of emotions, terrible cataracts. But when she could hear me, we had a relationship where I spoke to her. She understood me. She could do things. She's the smartest dog I've ever had. She knew how to open the roll down the windows in my car. And then when I locked the windows on the other side, because I was worried she was getting up on the armrest and she was getting up too high and I was worried she was going to fall out. Then she figured out that there was one door that I couldn't lock and it was mine, and she would come and sit on my lap and then look down and push the button to roll down my window so she could stick her head out the window. I mean, just a brilliant. Nice. And we had a beautiful relationship, and I love her to death. I call her my doggy soulmate. And there is no way I would ever let anything bad happen to her. How am I so much better than this God? It's so ridiculous.
Funny. It's funny how much better we all are than any God that's ever been proposed.
Yes.
$10 from the Raven, 200. Calls in, asks dumb question about defecating in the mouth, hangs up immediately afterwards. Why are the trolls so lame? The trolls used to be at least funny. It's, I mean, I think Can I Shit in Your Mouth is probably a little bit like Baba Booey. I mean, they kind of say it and get the hell out of there. And what's funny is they hang up as if I don't already have, their number or their IP address. And really, sometimes I will drop them instantly. Sometimes I like to play with my food for a while. And so let me ask them some specific questions, like, when exactly did you want to shit in my mouth? And, do I get a choice in what you ate beforehand? I mean, if you're going to just come in and try to be shockingly offensive for no reason,
right.
Let me at least play along.
Please no corn.
Yeah. I don't know. Corn's probably the safe one because it comes out exactly like it went in. So.
Alyssa is such a beautiful name. Alyssa Silverbow.
Yep.
What do you call a book club that's been stuck on the same book for years?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. This is,
Holy moly, $100 from Red Shrek. Thank you so much. That's incredibly generous. Is it too far of a stretch to suggest that what many contemporary Christians believe is partially built on political and religious propaganda? Yes. No, it's not too far to suggest that. Pushed by religious and political elites in the 6th and 7th century BCE Judah after the Assyrian destruction of Israel. Okay, I'm going to retract that because you're saying Is it too far of a
Yeah.
stretch to suggest that what contemporary Christians believe is based on political ideas from the 6th and 7th century in Judah after the Assyrian destruction of Israel? It is not too far of a stretch to say that that influenced it, but I think we've seen enough changes in Christianity in the last 100 to 150 years that I think some of the modern political and religious propaganda have trumped, I hate using that word now,
Yeah.
the lingering stuff from the 6th and 7th century. But some of it's still there because we're still got this notion of end times in Israel.
I think Christianity is far more influenced by Greek philosophy. I mean, Paul is Platonism all over the place. Okay. What?
I think this is
ARS. What is ARS?
Argentina money.
Argentina.
Well, still. Wow. Seems amazing. I don't know. From Olivia B. Just my weekly now, Troll SC. Love the team. Thank you all. I'm not sure I get that. Does she troll you with money?
Sure. And it looks like it's so much more. It's actually like, 50 cents or whatever, but I am happy that there are people. How do you not be thrilled that there's somebody in Argentina who's watching? Because I speak English only and I'm terrible at Spanish and Portuguese and everything else.
Right.
Yeah. So the fact that there's people out there who are watching us on a Wednesday night, in the evening, speaking a language that is at least a second language to them. Good for you guys. And thanks for watching.
I spent 6 weeks in the missionary training center. This is something you don't know about me. I spent 6 weeks in the missionary training center learning Portuguese. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I was dreaming in Portuguese, which was a really freaky experience. And then I got offered a record contract and bailed on my mission, which was one of the toughest things I
didn't know.
I got shunned like you would not believe because you do not come home from a mission. And then when my album came out, which was an album of religious music for the biggest record company, Mormon record company, then everybody turned it around and, you're going to touch so many more people than if you had gone on this mission to Hasid. Yeah, I love how that works.
You found a better mission.
Yes. 1999. Wow. From Baltazar 228. I always find the fact that there was a tree of eternal life in Eden despite death supposedly not coming into the world until sin came into the world. Why do you need a tree of life if there is no death? That's a good question.
Yes. That's a great question. All right. As a matter of fact.
And why didn't God tell Adam and Eve, hey, by the way, if you're going to eat from a tree, eat from this one first?
Oh, yeah. Well, you knew what was going to happen. You didn't want them living forever.
Yeah. No, I guess not.
$10 from Ari Zeroki Wolf Turner. Ooh, I'm going to mess some of these up. Patty's cold wind can logically be explained by anxiety-related body sensations. Yes, it can cause you to feel cold even on a 90-degree day. It makes me sad for her. Happy Thanksgiving, Lion Team. Be safe. Yeah, I'm aware of stuff like that. I try not to go through and offer explanations because what I found is that people say, "Ooh, I had this weird experience," and you say, "Well, it could be this," and like, "No, it definitely wasn't that. It could be this." No, it was that. You hear people like, "I was in bed, but I definitely wasn't dreaming," and then they go on to describe something that absolutely could be and probably was a dream. And so if you say, "Hey, there's a logical explanation for that cold wind," as you did, which is a great point to make, I find that it should probably still be done, but I find it doesn't necessarily move the needle. And I'm more interested in getting them to recognize something that is, I think, even more important than maybe there's a secular explanation. And that is, even if there's no explanation, the position you're in then is you don't have an explanation. You don't get to say, we can't come up with an explanation, therefore God did it. And that's the skeptic principle that I try to teach. But yeah, thanks, Ari.
People don't understand what the body can do. The body can do all kinds of things once once the mind is affected. I mean, it's quite powerful stuff. Or even if it's just a physical thing. I told you before the show, I had anemia for 3 months, and I had blankets piled up and comforters piled up 2 feet high, and I just could not get warm. I was freezing my ass off with and this was in May and June, part of it, and I could not get warm. It took me 20 minutes to get out of bed because I was so fearing having to pull the covers off and then get clothes on.
I spent so many years, like right now, I weigh right around 200 pounds, give or take 2 or 3 pounds. But I spent so many years up about 265, 270, that by the time I lost it, now granted, I got all the way down to 190 because I had a heart condition and was dying, and we fixed that now. But I didn't realize, like, I used to keep the house crazy cold, and now I don't. As a matter of fact, I have a heating pad on my chair all the time. I turn it on most of the time. And, you know, if it's above like 72, 73, I probably would grab a little blanket or something and just sit there like that. I don't run the air conditioner quite as much or quite as low because I have less insulation than I used to. And it's amazing how, you know, I got out of the Navy and wow, I don't even remember. 95 or 96, and then immediately blew up and put on like 40 pounds in 2 years, and then did more after that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just one of those things where I know what you're talking about, where you're going to be under a stack of blankets and you're still cold. And sometimes it has nothing to do with actually being cold. It's just the internal shivers and what your mind is telling you. You could be sitting there sweating, you know, sweating to the point where you get a rash and still it'd feel cold.
Right.
This is an answer for you.
$10 from Heather Rochi. Habitual, emotional, philosophical. Those are 3 words.
You were looking for the 3 categories of believers.
Oh. What was the second one? Habitual and philosophical, and what was the emotional? Thank you. Yeah, that's it.
Which ties to the fear thing that you were talking about. But yeah, thanks,
yes,
Heather.
Exactly.
That's great.
Thank you.
$10 from the Scariot generation. Just want to say thanks for all you folks do here. I'm a former Southern Baptist minister who deconstructed a little over 5 years ago, and you've been a big help to me in that whole process. Well, that's awesome.
Wow.
If you,
that's amazing.
There are people, by the way, Scariot. I know a number of people who have YouTube channels specifically focused on people telling their deconstruction stories. And if you haven't already, ask around, because there are some people who might be eager to have you on, just because I think we need, and maybe this is something the line could do at some point. It's always a call-in show, so it doesn't quite fit for interviews, and it doesn't quite fit for, let me tell life story stuff. But I think there's value in a show where somebody you've never seen, never heard of, explains how they got from there to here in, 10 minutes. Boom. Just,
yeah.
We don't have to trauma dump, but we can trauma bond. And thanks so much.
I'm never more impressed than with ministers or pastors or priests who find their way out, because I left a lot behind. I lost, Mormonism is very totalitarian in the not even in the negative sense, but in the way it just encroaches on every part of your life. Your whole life is centered around the church, and all of your friends are Mormon, and your business contacts are Mormon. And I lost a lot. I lost every single friend except for 1 or 2. But I didn't lose my livelihood per se. I mean, I had other to lose your whole, I mean, that's just, I'm so impressed. I just think the amount of courage to be able to do that is just mind-boggling. Okay, we have $13.99 from Tariq Al-Safi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I was convicted of 34 felonies Yep, that's my prez. I essayed women and started an insurrection. Yep, that's my prez. I am an atheist. Nope, that's not my prez. But wait, no, you're done.
True story.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be president, and neither is any other godless heathen for, well, let's say at least another 30 years. $10 from Jamnik. Matt, I'll be joining the CFFC at the Temple for Friendsgiving this weekend. Oh, awesome. Thanks again for telling me about them. My pleasure. That's the Central Florida Free Thought community. They are absolutely amazing. I am good friends with and absolutely admire and adore the people who run that and a number of the people involved there. Whenever I'm invited, if they invite me down to speak, I go. If they invite me to their free flow convention, I go. If they invite me to go on their cruise, I go. It's just like no bullshit. The best local secular community that I know of in the United States.
Wow. That almost makes me want to move to Florida. Almost.
It almost made me think about moving to Florida, but fuck that place. I'd like for CFFC to move to, let's rename Illinois to Fuckland or something. And then you can, the Central Fuckland Free Thought community.
Yeah, there you go. $10 from the Raven, 200. It's official. Vegeta is a better Saiyan? I don't know that word. Then go. What is that?
It's Dragon Ball Z stuff.
Okay. Jimmy, go take a bonsai drop from Yokozuna after a stink phrase from Rikishi. I don't know any of these. Rikishi. Then a moonsault from Jacob Fatu. Get wrecked by the whole Anoi family.
Yeah.
Wow.
So go back to that one real quick, Morgan, just because. So I'm an old school wrestling fan, and I promise one of these days we're going to get Mr. Ken Anderson on here. So the beginning reference is a Dragon Ball Z reference, and then he's telling Jimmy. So a bonsai drop from Yokozuna. Actually, all of these, Yokozuna, Rikishi, Jacob Fatu, all of those are part of the Noai family or extended family of wrestlers, which also includes The Rock and his dad, Rocky Johnson, and a bunch of others. So they are all related, and probably, I'm pretty sure they are the most expansive and successful wrestling family. And they intermarried. I think did Jimmy Snuka marry one of them at one point? I've forgotten. Anyway, thanks, Raven. $10 from Moira Bannister. Did the callers prove God? Did I miss it? Oh, how I wish that it had happened.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it didn't happen. Keep forgetting.
The callers did manage. I thought, genuinely, I put forth my best effort, and I tried to remain calm. I tried to have the best conversations we could. And right up, I was like, man, this call with Patty, this is going to be the last one. She's so sweet. It's going to be nice and easy. She doesn't want to make anybody mad. And then she became the most problematic individual because she refused to answer the questions that were asked and definitely just wanted to come and tell me all about Chuck as if I wasn't already familiar with that crap. It's one thing. And for that, yeah, I yelled so hard, I almost pushed my new teeth out of my mouth. It's bizarre to me that all we're trying to do is get to understand something. And it's like, oh, but wait, I just want to say this one thing because yes, congratulations, freshmen. You learned something new that some of the rest of us learned decades ago. I'd be happy to talk to you about it if you could answer this question. Because at the end of the day, the supposed prophecy and the answering of that prophecy are all contained within the same collection of books, and neither the prophecies nor the supposed fulfillment of those prophecies have any evidence to support that they occurred. And that's the key. This is why so many people they don't know anything about any of this, and they start studying it, and they get charismatic. They get some folks with some riz trying to convince you that Jesus loves you and has got your back. And so here you go. Let me show you. Here's what Isaiah says, and look, it matches what Jesus says. Well, congratulations. Harry Potter's the boy who lived.
Right. Right. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Patty, that's not actually her name. She has a very difficult name. I don't know if you picked that up. Okay.
I hear what you're putting down.
$10 from Tammy B. Any tours to Australia soon? I don't know what that means.
So Seth and Aron and I, by the way, the super chats are coming in faster than we're reading them. So we're going to pick up the pace just a little bit.
Okay.
Because I don't want to keep them arguing here all night. But Seth and Aron and I did a tour of Australia as the Unholy Trinity. There are no plans to go back or to redo that. Right. There are no plans for me to go anywhere, actually, at this point. But I would love to, if the opportunity presented itself. I'd love to grab Arden, get away from the snakes and stuff for, well, about the longest we can be gone anymore is, well, no, we can't both be gone. I'll have to hire somebody if we both go. But thanks so much, Tammy. I wish I was coming, but not currently.
Is this you or me? Did I read that? I can't remember.
I'll do it. $10 from SJL. I can use my one Portuguese phrase, cala a boca. Sorry, I don't mean that. Brian is one of my favorite occasional hosts. I don't know what you said, but thanks.
I don't know. Yeah, I learned how to talk about the plan of salvation. By the way, an amazing program. You go in at 9 a.m. at 12 noon. You no longer get to speak your language. You have to speak in the language that you're learning, and you're in class 8 to 10 hours a day, learning the language. It's crazy, but it's kind of useless because unless you get out and then finally go to Brazil and speak with people, because they teach you. I mean, you get some basics, but it's focused on learning the lessons that you're supposed to teach the people. Anyway, $10 from Andrew Smith. I am an ex-Mormon. You got to start saying Foreman. That's my trademark. Foreman, who also served a mission in Brazil. Oh, still fluent and active in the Brazilian community in Dallas. Glad to hear others who recovered from the LDS Church gave up everything worth. Everything, worth?
I think it might mean worth it. But
okay.
$20 from Saul Willis. Fun fact, which someone can fact check. There's a correlation between people who use straight pipes and higher dark triad personality traits, narcissism, sadism, and sociopathy. Go figure. Thank you both for your work. Straight pipes.
What is a straight pipe?
Higher dark triad personality traits. I don't know what straight pipes are. I guess
I use a bomb.
Another super chat. I'll look it up afterwards unless somebody gives us more money on the super chat to tell me what it is. But
did I read that last one? I take that chemo drug and it really messes with my short-term memory. I don't remember if I read the last one. $10 from John Gavin. What part of Florida is that being held in? I'm native to Polk County.
It's Central Florida. I don't know what county, but it's like greater Orlando area.
Okay.
$10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Patty was frustrating as hell. She had the veneer of civility and then paired it with a lack of manners. I'd have felt bad for her, as she's clearly being taken advantage of, but the rudeness. And to be fair, I'm going to bend over a little bit further backwards on Patty. The delay was part of the problem, but the delay will never explain why I have to ask the same question 4 or 5 times and not get an answer to it. And what does answer that is someone who isn't actually interested in what you have to say, but wants to make sure that you hear what they have to say.
Right.
Sorry. It's our show.
Listening is a skill. Yeah. $10 from the Raven 200. Since I mentioned Jacob Fatu, I have to do this now. Clears throat. I love you solo. I acknowledge you solo. I'm so lost in this.
You're doing great.
I just want to say I know.
$10 from Tasty Cutie. First of all, it's a cool name, and That is a cute picture. So, congrats.
Oh,
I wish I was a
nice.
tasty cutie. Feature a photo of scientific Jesus on a show. The same people who complain about Disney characters being black or gay follow European Jesus, who's actually Middle Eastern. Help me understand. Yes. And by the way, I've been, and I'm sure that Brian has too, to Salt Lake City, to what's the main temple where they have the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's awesome. I just stood there and
there was a guy, oh God, what was his name? A radio guy who did this show. I think it was syndicated, where he would do all the voices. He would have conversations with Phil Hendry. I don't know if you ever listened to him. I wrote him a number of times because he did these great shows. He totally punked me the first time I listened to the show. I thought there was someone really on talking to him, and he was having this conversation. I was so infuriated by this conversation, and that's what he did. It was a lot of fun. But I wrote him on a number of occasions saying, you got to have someone on the show who's written a book showing that the technology for photography existed 2,000 years ago, and that they found photos of Jesus and the 12, and that they would go on air, they would go through the book, and here's a picture of Jesus, casting out a demon, and just wait for all the people to call in, just outraged about how this is all just BS and all kinds of stuff like this. Here he is kissing Mary Magdalene. You could just get more outrageous as the thing went on.
And now that same sort of thing has become a type of meme, but the internet is so full of it that people can't tell truth from fiction anymore.
Right. Absolutely.
Anyway, thanks so much, Tasty Cutie. Much appreciated. Yes, it is incredibly frustrating to keep seeing that blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus.
$9.99 from Balthasar 228. I don't understand why anyone in a modern context would settle for 95% of Christian denominations. As long as you're going to believe in bullshit, Mormonism promises a planet. Why settle for less? And godhood. I mean, that's one of the things I liked about Mormonism. I mean, if you're going to have to suffer all this crap, you better get some big payoff. But except for when you think about it, what you have to do then is go on and continue this mess that our God was a part of. And by the way, he had a God too. If you really look into Mormon theology, he was as man now is, God once was. So he continued the crap too, which means in the next life, I would have to watch my kids commit genocide against each other. Not my idea of heaven. I'm just not interested.
That actually goes back to Ryan calling about Christianity being so different. Well, Mormonism is different too.
Oh, you want different? They're out there.
We didn't have to go back to that. I'm ready. I'm ready for Sal Morgan. $10 from Sal Willis. Straight pipes are the things people put on cars to be obnoxious. That's what I thought, but it didn't make sense with the other part of the statement. By the way, Viridifacult is my name. You can't pronounce it. You're right.
I love that joke, by the way, in the you're correct.
It's a rough name. Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, huge thank you to you, Brian, for agreeing to come on and do the show again. So good to see you. Get you back another time. Maybe on a Sunday show or something.
Sure.
On that note, let me wrap this up and put a little bow on it so that Morgan can go get some rest, and so that all of our mods and our call screeners and everybody else can go and get some rest. Huge thank you to all of them for helping out here on the line. If you are not already liked and subscribed, what are you waiting for? You can like, as a matter of fact, you can subscribe and then unsubscribe and subscribe and unsubscribe. And I think each of those clicks will count, and will it be like almost like we got 3 subscribers, lost 3 subscribers, but there were a lot of people who were interested in subscribing for at least a second. In the meantime, don't forget about linemerch.com, where you can go to get t-shirts and other things. And eventually there may be a no, you're done shirt. There we'll see what's going on. Thursday in the United States, that's tomorrow, is Thanksgiving. I'm going to be spending it alone after I drop Aron off at the airport, and probably asleep for a good chunk of it. But I'm thankful for nothing. Everything ends, everything dies. There's no reason to be thankful for everything. Once I'm dead, this will have all been a waste, right? There's nothing, why bother even living or caring about anything? It's all going to rot. It's all going to go away. The universe is going to experience heat death. There's your prophecy. There's your end times eschatology. The universe is just going to get cold and fucking die. Let's just all be miserable about it. Oh, wait, no, that's not how I feel at all. In reality, I am, in fact, incredibly grateful for people who have stood up against superstition and religion to promote the science that allowed me to have a triple bypass and restore my heart to better functioning order than it's been in decades. To people who allowed the science to replace my bad teeth with something that is functional. For the various, and that's just the ones that affect me. And all of the people, no matter what they call themselves, who compassionately engage with other human beings and say, you know what? I may not understand what it's like to be you, but I understand that there's value in you and that my humanism directs me to try to treat you with respect and dignity. Oh, I don't understand pronouns. Go back to fucking school, because you don't need to understand pronouns to call people what they want to be called. You don't have to know what somebody's name means. I'm American. My name doesn't mean shit. Actually, Matthew means gift of God in other languages and stuff, but that's a quote. Ooh, there's a car alarm going off outside. So that messed up my Thanksgiving kind of soliloquy there. But I'm incredibly grateful to Brian for showing up tonight, to Morgan for producing, to all of our moderators, and to everybody who participated, both by calling, yes, even Patty, with frustration or not. I am grateful for the people who called and participated, because there's good content and good understanding. And hopefully Patty and others will listen back to that and go, oh, now I get that the point wasn't, hey, let me disprove this, but here's why what you're going to say isn't worth anybody's time. We've been down this road before. If you call in and say, how can you deny God? It's real easy. I deny God. Done. Oh, if you're asking what's your justification doing it, thank you. I'm grateful that you asked. My justification for denying the existence of God is that no gods have ever spoken to me, interacted with me, and nobody has ever shown any sort of evidence that any of that has ever happened for anybody. But there's loads and loads of claims about those gods. There are claims in religious texts. There are claims in every church. There are claims in every one of these calls about personal revelation, or I went through something difficult. Something amazing happened to me, and it just must have been God. It must have been God. But it's over now.
But it's over now.
There you go.
There we go.
That'll be your next album. On that note, thanks everybody for tuning in. Like and subscribe. And you can find more of this by going to patreon.com/calltheline. Roll those credits. There's our producers.
There we go.
I'm sure I missed some announcement. I probably failed at everything. I'm going to get fired over this, I'm sure.